Hello, everyone. Thanks for giving us your time today for VR Download. I'm Ian Hamilton in New York, joined by David Heaney from London as we discuss next steps in personal computing. We're wearing Quest 3 headsets today with last generation meta avatars. We're using hand tracking with built-in microphones. And my thanks to our patrons for supporting the work we do over on UploadVR.com. We have one of the hardest working teams in journalism and easily the hardest working team dedicated to covering the impact of virtual reality technology. We've just exclusively premiered the Raptor Cliffs Walkabout Mini Golf Design Tour on our channel. And I've just had my first public reply on Threads from Andrew Bosworth, that's Meta's CTO, telling me that the person sitting across from me is right. And I want to say thank you sincerely for the support that our team does to our patrons. That's XR Developer News, Podems, the developer of Smash Drums, Holonet, Mike Manzano, Richard Meller, Parmesan, Qubits. Hello to everyone out there, Mighty Coconut, Not Suspicious, Denver, everyone else out there. We'll talk with you in a minute. David, what do we have today?
Hello, everyone. It is good to see you again. I see F. Meister saying that they were scared that there wasn't going to be a show. Yeah, I was trying to get one topic in an article out at the last minute, but it looks like I'm going to have to keep talking to the developer there. There is something very cool the Quest developer has pulled off, but I want to make sure we get the technical details absolutely, definitely right there before we publish that, so we couldn't get it out today. And I think, Ian is talking to an Apple Vision Pro developer about something really, really interesting they're doing. And he's in the same situation where we want to make sure we have the details crystal clear. So those two stories we're going to be talking about next week. But, just on a side note to tease those, I guess, it's really impressive to see what developers are pulling off.
Yeah, I want to tease that my story, the developer has walked 70 miles inside of an Apple Vision Pro headset outdoors to explore the functionality for the Apple Vision Pro. And it actually sounds very similar to what David is saying that a dev is exploring inside Quest 3. So we're going to have two really, really great breakdowns there of just wildly cool things that devs are doing with each of these headsets.
Yeah, both pushing the bounds on mixed reality in different ways and kind of getting rid of some of the issues. And yeah, we're going to talk about that next week. But this week we have 8 topics to discuss. So firstly, we're going to talk about what Ian was alluding to there in terms of the public discussion on Threads, which is the recent change to the app used to manage the Ray-Ban Meta glasses, as well as a small change, I guess, in the privacy options for the Ray-Ban Meta glasses. And this is a topic Ian very much so is interested in, and we're going to break that down at the start of the show. Then we're going to talk about Bigscreen Beyond 2, because unfortunately its shipping has been delayed to June due to what they say is a PCB design flaw. So they've had to scrap 5,000 of those printed circuit boards and start production of those boards again, which is delaying the earliest shipments of Beyond 2. We will then discuss something that will affect 5% of you, according to market share. Motorola phones are now usable in Horizon OS on Quest 3 and 3S. And funny enough, on UploadVR.com, we did have people in the comments who actually have Motorola phones in 2025. So it's great to see them having something that really helps them out, I guess. We'll then talk about the report from Bloomberg's Mark Gurman that claims that Meta's top priority, or top hardware priority, and one of its biggest priorities as a company, is shipping those advanced smart glasses with a heads-up display in October. And according to Gurman, they are now working weekends, some of the staff on this project, to try and get that product shipped in October. And that's what we expect Meta Connect 2025 is going to heavily, heavily focus on. Then we'll discuss Varjo Teleport 2.0. It's the $30 a month subscription service that gives you photorealistic scene capture. So you can use your phone to capture a real world physical scene and then play it back in VR, explore it, walk around it, volumetrically sick stuff in VR. And Teleport 2.0 has increased the quality there to what they say is now best in class and even rivals photogrammetry, which would take a lot longer and expertise and time and effort. We'll then discuss Lowe's. They are letting customers in Austin and the Bay Area design their kitchen with Apple Vision Pro. That app has been available on Vision Pro since launch, but now if you don't have a Vision Pro, like most of the people in the world, you can book to go into the store for free and sit down and design your kitchen in VR. We will then discuss what I see some people in the comments already excited about. Quest's pass-through camera API can now be used in store apps, so it's no longer considered an experimental API. The developers that have been playing with it over the past 6 weeks, and in some cases longer than that if they had early private access, will now be able to actually ship capabilities using this on the Horizon store. So I think there are already 1 or 2 apps that came out earlier today with updates that use this, and we expect in the coming weeks and months to see many more. Finally, we will discuss Meta's Q1 earnings call. So their Reality Labs division, their metaverse and wearables division, their revenue declined 6% year over year, and they say this is due to lower Quest sales, although they also say that Quest engagement is up. So that's a very interesting contrast to maybe 2 or 3 years ago, where they were selling more and more Quest 2s, but retention was going down. Now we're in a new era where the opposite's happening, right? They're getting retention up, but now the headset sales are no longer kind of growing there. So we'll talk about the nuances of that, the good and the bad, and what that might mean at the end of the show. But if we're ready and there's nothing else you want to talk about in the intro, should we talk about that Ray-Ban Meta story?
Yeah, let's get into it. I wanted to just mention real quick Muddy Coconut again in the audience, and just the fact that we've got our audience building over time, a lot of time travelers out there that catch up to us on 2x speed as they get into the show. We might have a big group of that today because we've had to split our audience to go and watch that premiere over on our channel of the Raptor Cliffs course. So I was looking at that over here on my phone through the little eye hole here, and I see there's a lot of people over there watching that stream simultaneous to this stream. So if you end up being a time traveler coming over from that stream to this stream and catching up to us, thank you for tuning in. And yeah, let's go right through this first thing, David. Bring us down the news, and then I'll tell you my opinionated piece after you break it down for us.
Sure. So there's 2 things that have gone on here in the same week in relation to these glasses. One is that they have rebranded, although that's maybe not the right word, the app that you use to set up and manage these glasses, including to browse the media library of photos you've taken, for example. They've renamed it from Meta View to Meta AI, and it's much more than just a rebrand because they've actually now put Meta AI, their ChatGPT competitor, into this app. So it's one app that does both things. It gives you access to, even if you don't own the glasses, Meta AI, just like you might install the ChatGPT or the Gemini or the Grok app or whatever, but it's also the app that's used to control the glasses. And so one problem Ian's encountered here is that to continue to use this app, you have to agree to the terms of service for Meta AI, because this app is the same app that you use to access Meta AI. However, the kind of I think maybe misconception Ian had was that this would mean that Meta AI was no longer optional on the glasses, but it is still the case that they are optional on the glasses. Using this app will not turn it on. It's still a toggle in the settings, and if you turn it off, if you had it off already when you set the glasses up, it's still going to stay off. If you turn it off after, it will stay off. But there are some changes to the privacy policy. So one of them is that the multimodal feature is no longer optional. You either turn AI all the way on, and if it needs to, based on the context, it will use the camera to see the real world. For example, if you say, what does this sign say in English? And you look at a sign in a different language, it's going to take a picture with the camera and use that to answer your question for obvious reasons. This is either all the way AI or no AI. Now, the other difference is that you can no longer opt out of having your kind of voice recordings saved. You can delete them after the fact at any time, but you can't opt out of them being saved in the first place. And that actually mirrors a change that Amazon made to Alexa recently as well. They've done the same kind of thing there.
What was that about, opt out in the first place? What was that you said at the end there?
You can no longer opt out of having your voice recordings saved when you're using Meta AI. So if you say, hey Meta, how much does an average elephant weigh? That voice recording of you saying that will be saved unless you explicitly delete that. And again, that's the same thing that Alexa has kind of done there.
All right, so the reply on Threads from Andrew Bosworth, Tank over on Threads, was pointing out that David was right in his analysis of the way Meta AI is positioned inside the app. But here's my question. Hello to Guy Godin out there, Psycho Bueller, headset historian, Kaylee, a lot of others, Onakazi, Parmesan, Caleb of New York City, a lot of regular viewers out there. Thank you all tuning in. My question is this a gate to me accessing my camera on the glasses?
Yeah, so I get your concern. One of the things they've done here to kind of distinguish Meta AI from um, ChatGPT is that they have a social element to it. So you can optionally share any of your interactions with Meta AI in a social feed. So, people have, for example, shared the images they've generated or kind of recipes and things like that. And to be clear, that is completely optional. You have to click share and public share. It's not like every interaction is in a public feed. And interestingly, reportedly, OpenAI plans to do the same thing. They want to turn ChatGPT into kind of social network as well. So part of setting up this new app is choosing a username. And what Ian was kind of posting on Threads was a screenshot of, please choose your username and continue to use the app. And Ian saying that correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't want to have a username. And as far as I'm aware, there's no other kind of requirement. You don't have to have a profile image. You don't have to share anything, but there would be a profile there with a username of your choice. And you don't want to, from my understanding, want any kind of social network. It is weird that this is yet another Meta social network. And David Bigelow was asking in the comments, did I miss the Ray-Ban AI knife fight? Let's give a bit of context here because I don't think you did. It actually was between Ian and I, though it wasn't even meant to be a fight of any kind or an argument. It's, I saw Ian posting this screenshot of the setup screen and going, I like using my Ray-Ban Meta glasses, this is you, Ian, to be clear, for taking pictures, for listening to video, and I don't want to enable Meta AI. And it seemed like you were then under the impression that this new update would require you then to use Meta AI on the glasses, and I was simply pointing out that you don't have to, and then kind of Andrew Bosworth.
And I don't have to use the glasses anymore, right? It's my point. Like sure. It's an either or here is my point.
Sure. So you don't want to use the glasses because the app that's required to use the glasses has AI in it?
That I have to agree to these terms in order to continue using my glasses that had features yesterday that I do not have access to today because Meta wants me to agree to these terms. I do not agree to these terms to continue accessing the features I had access to yesterday.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the thing I was confused about, though, is that I did skim these terms. It's quite a lot. And from what I understand, these are terms saying if you use Meta AI, this is what applies to you. And one of the things you had highlighted, for example, was like, it was in the term saying don't rely on AI for medical diagnoses. And so my question for you kind of is, why does it matter what the terms of using AI, Meta AI, is if you're not going to use Meta AI?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things like you don't own certain things. You own your prompts, but there's different language about the outputs. That's number one. Also, I think all the imagery now, does the imagery auto go to the cloud or does that stay on your phone?
No, only stuff that when you use the AI to visually ask. So if you say, hey, Meta, how old is this building? And you look at a building, that image will be saved to Meta and they can train on that. But if you just take a picture with the camera for your own personal media usage and don't invoke the AI, that will not be used. That is still private to you.
So let me read you one of the sentences in the terms here. You should not rely upon outputs for any purpose or. Okay, so there's a whole nother part of the sentence. The rest of the sentence is pharmaceuticals, the thing you referred to. The first part of the sentence is you should not rely upon outputs for any purpose.
Yeah, I don't understand what you're asking. I think this is pretty standard across these AI chatbots, right? And ChatGPT has a disclaimer at the bottom saying, ChatGPT will make mistakes. Don't, please check its output. The hallucination problem is still huge with large language models. And I think it's pretty basic cover your ass, as they call it, CYA from these companies to say, don't go and make a major life decision based on what this bot says.
You're right. You just said it. That's why I'm refusing to agree to these terms. Why these are bricks to me now.
But you don't want to use the AI. This is the really confusing part.
No.
I'm not going to talk.
The policy is there to cover their ass, not mine.
Sure, but it's saying if you use Meta AI, don't trust what it's saying. And you're saying I don't want to use Meta AI. But then why do you care if you're not going to hear what it's saying because you're not going to use it?
I am not a lawyer, and I don't know what things are contained in those terms. I agreed to different terms when I bought these glasses. I agreed to different terms when I used them for, I don't know, my wedding day, the day of, like I used them an extraordinary amount as cameras and to listen to audio. Now they've turned them into a different class of product. These are no longer smart glasses. They've defined a product called AI glasses, and they're saying you need to agree to terms to continue using these glasses in any way, shape, or form, David. That's bullshit. That's
Sure,
fucking bullshit. I will
but
cuss for
which
the first time on the show because it makes me so mad.
I understand this, and it is, an unfortunate reality of using a lot of consumer tech these days that you will get this. We have updated the privacy policy. How often have you seen that at the top of your email? Um, I still am so just confused of these terms are. It's to use the app, right? And I'm not saying I agree with what they did. It's kind of weird in a way that you now have to use a different app than what you were uh, given when you first bought these glasses. And yes, it's
It's,
completely valid to say it's very interesting that they launched calling these smart glasses and they now are called AI glasses. So you can't say that anyone that buys them today is going to be fooled because they are sold as AI glasses. It is
yeah.
crystal clear when you buy them what
Okay.
they are today. But I'm saying I understand you bought them before they were marketed as that. I
Yeah.
totally get that. Um,
So,
but I
so
still
go
just am
ahead.
so confused. Which part of these terms specifically do you feel is going to be a problem given that you don't want to use the AI in the first place?
Sorry, I was distracted by the readers, the viewers there, and trying to reply to them. What was that question at the end there?
Sorry, it was just given that you don't plan to use the AI, which specific part of the terms of service for Meta AI do you find concerning? Like you're
I,
not using it.
I mean that I read to you. I just read it to here.
But you just
Like
what you read was don't trust the AI. But
to do the thing it's supposed to do. Like I'm
but you're
getting
not going to
sold
use
AI
it.
glasses that
No,
don't do the thing that
I'm not.
I'm requesting it to. Meta, what is the sky blue? Do not trust my response.
Sure, no, I get that, but you don't want to. But let me be crystal clear, and please correct me if I'm wrong. You don't want to use Meta AI in the first place. You don't want to ask it if the sky's blue. Is that wrong?
Correct, but I like.
Okay,
Why do
then
I
why do
have
you?
to agree to acknowledge its existence on my device that it wasn't there before doing? So I saw one of his questions here. Am I just going to not use AI? No, of course I'm going to use AI in various routes. I've used it in the last week in various. I've done some fun things with it just in my personal time. But that's not the point here, right? The point is that I bought smart glasses and now I'm being asked to agree to the terms of an AI product that was not what I bought when I got it. And I'm saying, no, I would like a refund and to send these back. So I have one pair that was provided to me by Meta for free, maybe actually two, but I also bought two or three on my own. I lost one pair. My prescription glasses are disappeared somewhere. I found a pair that disappeared in the first gen. These are fascinating products, right? Fascinating products. But I don't care about the AI and I don't want to have to agree to consider using it in the future. I don't want to have to agree to the legalese that's there. Like, I just, you gave me an agreement and I decline. But give me back the device I had yesterday.
Sure, okay, I get what you're saying.
Why am I fighting with the CTO of Meta on this?
I understand. I think there's probably we're not going to agree on the whole distinction between agreeing to terms of something you're not going to use and bundling. But I do agree that if you ask support for a refund based on that basis, that seems like a reasonable thing that they would give you a refund and obviously let you return the device. Um, it's just I'm still just very very confused. We're going to go around in circles because I'm going to give you the same responses I have.
How
The app
often do you
updates
use,
to add a feature. You're
David?
asked to agree to the feature, but you're not going to use the feature. Does it matter? Like the glasses are the same. You still can keep Meta AI turned off. It will not turn on. This will not turn it on your
Uh,
glasses.
I'm it's they put the words "not now" in one of their prompts inside the app, and implying that your consent will be won in the future. We will have your consent in the future. And here is this solution. And I see all these devs around me who use AI in various facets. And I get that you use AI in various facets for your work. And it's actually a useful tool for you translating what's in your brain into code on the page. But that doesn't mean everybody wants to use your tools that you guys use to get your work done. I have a question for you, David. Was AI used in the coding of where we are right now?
No, I mean, this app hasn't been updated in around a year, to be frank. So I don't think any of the agents would have been good enough there.
You
So
might
no,
consider it now. To be clear, you think it would be in the ballpark of reasonability to have it code for you a little bit now?
I haven't tried it, but it would be certainly interesting to try. From the developers I have spoken to, it depends. The nature of the APIs and SDKs shifts so much in this industry that generally what the most of these models were trained on is woefully outdated. So it ends up telling you how you should have done things if you were building, a Quest 2 app with the old legacy Meta SDKs 2 years ago, but not what to do now. So I feel like that's what I've heard from developers, though I'm sure there are many kind of more mundane tasks that it's useful for. And for things like web development, I've definitely played with it for that. If you're trying to just, write a quick function to do something, then yes. But I'm very skeptical of the current model's capabilities of like doing entire applications. I think that's unwise at this point. But if you want to write a function or two, I don't see the problem with that at all. If you're just saying, write me a function that takes in X, Y, Z and outputs A, B, C, given this.
One of the things I love about our show is I legitimately did not know David's response to that, and that was a very nuanced take of a developer's approach to using AI and what he sees it useful for. Even a cautious approach, because I think some people out there are more fully in than you are. But just hit that like button and share this link out, because this is a raw, real conversation about something we're learning about in real time. But I really want to call out Headset's historian's comment here. It's odd to need to consent to something you aren't going to use.
No, I get that. It's just, I don't think this is like Machiavellian that they want to make you consent. I think it's just they decided to make it one app, right? Like it would be really weird if you were to, for most people, they're probably going to be buying these glasses today. They're literally marketed in stores as AI glasses now. They're going to be using Meta AI on this thing. So the counterfactual here, the kind of the other alternate world is that you would then have to have a Meta AI app and a Meta View app, and you would manage some things from one and one from the other, and then you couldn't easily do the thing of start a conversation on the glasses, continue them in the app or something like that. I get that argument from Meta, I do, but I also get your argument that then that means that for you, someone who bought these before they were explicitly marketed as AI glasses, that then does have the trade-off of you specifically don't want to even click accept to the AI, even though you don't want to use it, which we'll not argue with 10 times over. But I do get where you're coming from. I don't, if you're not going to use the AI, I'm still confused of why it would bother you that much to say, I am okay with the fact that the AI will make mistakes.
Yeah, so I appreciate it, David. Thank you for giving me the space to air this out with you here on the beginning of the show. And I apologize for cussing for any of our younger listeners. I am pretty heated about this because we've seen this before. Meta account linked Facebook accounts. And then, said you had to have a Facebook account in order to use the Quest headset. I was on the record, I think in this studio and in public, calling that bullshit at the time. And then lo and behold, a couple of years pass and Meta backed off that requirement and launched Meta accounts. I hope I'm not going to break my glasses in two yet, but I do really, really hope that they roll this back so that it is not required in order to access these core features. Now that said, one thing, like I said, break the glasses. I'm being a little bit facetious there. What I want to make a clear thing about is I'm going to maybe go agree to the Meta terms. I may go agree to Meta's AI use, but I'm going to take the pair of glasses that I agreed to AI use, and they're going to go in a bag with my Meta Quest 3, and that is going to be used for work. I'm going to explore the Meta AI features on those glasses exclusively for my job at UploadVR. I'm going to eject that device from personal use, which I've used it an extraordinary amount over this last year with personal use. I love the camera. It's such a cool concept. I got videos that I could not capture any other way of a cat walking through Central Park, right? And the only way I caught the video of the cat walking through Central Park is I had glasses on my face that I could activate the camera on quickly enough to get this cat being walked through the street. I talked to this guy who caught a fly home run ball with the Meta Smart glasses, and we had a fascinating conversation about AI and AR over the long term. And he like I that was an amazing use of the glasses. But that guy in particular, the only way he caught a fly ball while wearing the Meta glasses, while also getting video with the glasses on his face, is because he pressed and trained as a photographer how to press the button on the side of the glasses quickly enough to capture the moment, because Meta AI is too damn slow for his specific use case. That person probably is going to love the AI, right? Like, there's plenty of people out there, product market fit, right, are going to love the AI. I'm not in that category. I bought a different category of device.
Sure. Yeah.
Consent creep from Fast Lawyer. Yeah, consent creep.
I think the audience is very much so liking hearing your views on this. I see Opsar pointing out something for the old schoolers, that they're still peeved that you have to create a Google account for YouTube. Yeah, I remember the controversy around that. I remember that when you had to like link your Google Plus account for YouTube. Remember that? When they tried to have their Facebook competitor. It is an unfortunate reality of consumer tech that there are these kind of merging. You have to use service A to use service B, or service at all to use the hardware product. And how many smart home devices or little quirky things do you buy and end up having to make an account and agree to terms? I'm not saying it's a perfect world, but it doesn't seem too remarkable to me, is all I would kind of finish this off by saying.
Well, now we've got to get through this list. David is in extraordinary heat over there already in England, and so I want to be respectful of his time and try to get us in and out of this episode as quickly as possible, even though we've just taken a half hour for this subject. However, I think we needed to, because I'm looking at the last subject today, Meta's Reality Labs Q1 revenue. We'll get to that. But I noticed that the little blurb that they have, like what is Meta in the Q1 thing, says we do immersive technologies and I can't remember if artificial intelligence is mentioned in that, but the words virtual reality and smart glasses, like those don't appear in what Meta is. They want to be something else. We've seen the evolution of them moving away from the word virtual reality towards mixed reality. They start marketing the Quest 3 headset as a mixed reality device, confusing a lot of people in the audience out there about what is this thing, what is the core functionality of it. It's the same related story. They're all in as a company on AI, and I think we've got an active question here in our audience of just how much of, at least for me, this is an active question for me. You decide, David, whether you think this is a thing. You audience, you guys decide whether this is on the right path. Are they investing too much in the AR glasses?
So let's get on to that. Yeah. When we, you kind of said this is our last topic. Let's start talking about it. Yeah.
We'll get. I don't want
questions. These are good questions, but let's get to them then. For sure. When we talk about that at the end, I am very much so interested in hearing your thoughts on that, both from you, Ian, and the audience. That's going to be a really interesting one for sure. Let's just get it into our first topic then, our second topic, sorry, I should say, which is Bigscreen Beyond 2. So the unfortunate news from Bigscreen is that there is going to be delays for the first batch of shipping. So Beyond 2 and Beyond 2E, as I'm sure all of our audience probably knows, were announced and went on sale in March, and the first orders were supposed to ship in April and May, respectively. And they basically saw heavy demand, and so within 24 hours, any new orders were pushed out to June anyway. But now the news is that even for those early orders that were supposed to ship in April and May, they're kind of pushed out to June because of an issue with the printed circuit boards. So they're saying that this design flaw in the PCB affected controller tracking, and that early testers encountered the issue, and that by the time that they had confirmed the issue, they had already produced 5,000 PCBs with the flaw, which now have to be scrapped. And, I'd estimated that Bigscreen Beyond 1 is probably sold in the low tens of thousands. We're probably talking about roughly, very, very roughly, this is only an order of magnitude estimate, to be clear. Please don't quote this as a precise estimate, 20,000 headsets, plus or minus a bunch. So this would probably be a significant number of their pre-orders. And they actually interestingly said that they've had help with Valve on this issue, with Beyond 2 including some improvements that were previously implemented in the Valve Index that will improve controller tracking. They also say they're going to scale up production. They've hired 11 new employees across their Los Angeles assembly factory and customer support, and they have their overseas manufacturer running double shifts overnight. They say they're also using computer vision and quality control to improve greater speed and accuracy and make sure that they get this out properly. And, I saw a really interesting comment on the UploadVR.com article about this from someone saying that there are certain other companies in the industry who would have just shipped those PCBs anyway and just let that be a quality issue. And, if controller tracking was bad in some scenarios, they would have just let it happen and then maybe fixed it down the line for some people. So it's obviously very unfortunate for people who were hoping to get their Beyond 2 in April and May to see this happen. But at the same time, I'm sure they're happy to get a headset that is going to be working properly with controller tracking. And it's great to see the transparency from Bigscreen on this. This was not some generic, a certain issue in production caused. They described the exact issue, the exact number of boards affected, how they're addressing it, what's happening, and why it was important to do. So kudos to Bigscreen for that kind of transparency, which I think buyers are going to really appreciate.
Yeah, we've of course got to see them deliver. We've always got to see them deliver. There were reports of quality concerns with some of the first batch, but Bigscreen had pushed back on some of those reports, saying their return rates are very, very low. Their exchange rates are very, very low. And this is a more challenging product. They've got the movable parts in there. This was, of course, I flew out in a 24-hour turnaround to San Francisco and New York and back in order to put a little hex tool, I think it was, inside the side of this device, twist it around, and have it move the lenses on each side. So you put the hex tool over there and start rotating the lens, and start moving the lenses exactly in front of your eyeballs. Absolute magic, real innovation in hardware design and PCVR. Absolute magic to kind of like see that kind of innovation. But, it's a big moment for Bigscreen to try to deliver those. They don't want those to be a bad experience for anyone. They want to have a really, really solid product here for the future. And so it makes sense that they would delay this, but we don't want there to be further delays, and that's what we always worry about.
Yeah, I mean, the first generation product had delays. They did not achieve their shipping timelines. Hardware is very, very hard. And what a lot of these startups do, even the good ones, is that they really want to get stuff out for obvious reasons, for financial reasons, for expectation reasons. And so they kind of announce with more transparency than you would see from a big company. By the time a company like Meta launches their new headset, they have gone through a lot of production tests, quite significant scale. They've sent already thousands out to developers. They've made adjustments to production. By the time they actually announce this thing, they typically have like hundreds of thousands of them in warehouses, where you're talking about a headset like Quest 3S. So if this was a giant megacorp that had the resources to, push these things out and wasn't trying to be as quick as possible, you maybe wouldn't even have heard about the headset yet until they were already through this. But for startups, it's a different dynamic. So you do kind of get this problem where sometimes these things are delayed. And this is a big moment for Bigscreen, because the expectations are huge on them. They have addressed so many of the concerns of the original product. That shift to, as you say, this innovative per eye IPD system is significant. The fact that they've kind of gotten rid of most of the trade-offs of their small lenses is significant. This is a huge moment. There are so many products like this where the first generation comes out and it's a really interesting idea, but it's flawed. And that's not just for startups, right? There's a lot of big companies that will release a first generation product that is for super early adopters. It's got its flaws, and then Gen 2 comes out and it addresses those flaws. And that's this moment for Bigscreen. And I think whether they can ship this, on this new schedule now in this summer, whether this arrives and doesn't have quality issues at scale when it gets into customer hands, whether this is well received, whether they can do this all profitably, this is the kind of moment where we find out what is Bigscreen going to be. Is it going to be one of the companies in PC VR headsets that is, riddled with reputation of bad issues like other companies, or is it going to become a staple of PC VR hardware? I think this is the summer where we find that out. And yeah, I don't envy the stress that I'm sure is going to be on Bigscreen's team as they kind of get through this moment.
Yeah, it was wild. I appreciate that context, David. Fantastic context to add here. I went face to face with the CEO there, Darshan, at GDC, and one of the questions I asked him as I was trying this headset out is, would you consider selling at this point? And that's a wild question to kind of throw at a founder who's been at this more than a decade. And you go through life changes, and you're young and hungry at the start of this, but now you've built something, and life changes have hit you, and maybe you have different priorities, and someone comes up with a very, very large check and says, you no longer have to worry about this anymore, right? Like it changes the way you think about this. So yeah, my heart goes out to people going through the stress of actually delivering. I want to point out, right, Immersed VR, I noticed their YouTube video popped up in my feed, and they're holding investor meetings as updates to their shipping status. So they're like, we're going to ship sometime in the future, and here's an update for our investors. That's not what's happening here with Bigscreen. Like we're not, like, they're not talking to investors, and so it's companies at completely different. Yeah, they're talking to customers, completely different stages. And Gigo and popping up to say, "Oh dear," because I lobbed that grenade into this situation. All right, let's move on to the Motorola phone store, David.
Sure. There's a few more things I want to say there, though, which is just, that on Immersed, we're still following that story. I can't say anything yet, but there are some things that I'm following up in regards to Immersed to see what's going on there. Just to quickly answer Ivan's question, what were the flaws of the Beyond One? Which, because I said it was an innovative headset, but it had its flaws. One of them was that the IPD scanning system you use with your iPhone wasn't perfect, right? So if there was any flaw in that, you would get this headset with a fixed IPD that you would either have to send back or just deal with the fact that the lens was out of alignment. The other problem is that then you couldn't share it. You couldn't show someone a demo. This was only to you. The resale value is obviously harmed there by the fact that that's a fixed IPD system. The other issue is that the lenses just weren't great, right? They were great in one sense in that they were very small, and then they supported a very small headset, right? That's the fundamental focus of the product. But they traded off a lot to be that small, right? They did not have the kind of edge-to-edge clarity that you see in the newer pancake lenses, and that you see in the likes of Beyond 2. It didn't, there were issues with optical distortion, such as God rays and things like that. And that's not obviously completely fixed in Beyond 2, but it's a significant upgrade. Like the main thing from Beyond 1 to Beyond 2, the displays are the same. It's the lenses that are radically different. It's not only that they're adjustable, it's that they are significantly upgraded. And by definition, that's also what the flaw with Beyond 2 was, or Beyond 1 was, that those lenses just were not great.
Yeah, we put a lot of our cards on the table at UploadVR. Like when we went to the Immersed demo, I wore the camera glasses, didn't I? That was a video interview that I recorded, basically, of the CEO of Immersed. You can go find that video right in our article of him answering my hard questions face to face, and then you can see me in my first 2 minutes, like literally my first 3 minutes, putting this device on my face, and then asking for help and adjusting it and figuring out where that is. But there's a moment in the video where you watch me, I'm putting on the headset, and I say I'm gone, right? Like it's I want to say 10 seconds or something at the headset on my face. And I tell him, Darshan, the CEO, who's like his head's right next to me. I can't hear you now because he's put on the audio strap over my ears. I'm already in a theater, and I'm there watching a movie, and it's such a completely different experience than pressing the side button on your Quest and then waiting actually pressing the button on the side of your Quest 3 times because you didn't actually press the on button the right way the first time, and then waiting another 30 seconds for your Quest to turn on and for the home screen to load.
That doesn't. Come on, like you press you put the headset on and it loads in like 3 seconds, right?
I knew I was going to trigger you with that one.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I just some people always pretend that like turning like what do you mean? The Quest 3S has an on button. The Quest 3 has a proximity sensor. You turn it on, I can pick it up and I'm in 3 seconds. But that's not the advantage here, right? The advantage is that this thing is tiny, it's light. Those are the advantages there. You've got those micro OLED displays, and that's why it is remarkable what they did with the lenses here, right? I don't think you're going to win the convenience argument with PCVR, right? It's obviously a lot more inconvenient in many senses, but it's the quality argument here, and it's the weight, and it's all of those things. And I see Guy Godin saying if the battery isn't completely drained, you keep it on a charger, right? Like you keep it on a charger. Am I like?
I mean, I've got my charger up in the closet, right? And the headset still ends up on my table, right? It still ends up on my table. I have a battery pack that always travels inside my Vision Pro bag, and they travel together, and when it drains out, in order to solve this problem.
I just have my Quest 3 on a charging dock. You don't have to get the expensive official one. There are charging docks you can get for $20 or $30 on Amazon or other retailers like that. You leave it on the charging dock. It sits there, just like your PlayStation would sit somewhere, or your Nintendo Switch. Like you keep your Nintendo Switch in the charging dock, right? You don't leave your Nintendo Switch lying on the table. You leave it in the little dock, and then you pull it out, and it's always charged.
I think that flow is wrong. I agree with that. We've gotten off topic, but my Vision Pro almost never leaves the bag that I can wear at my side, and there's space in that bag for an extra battery pack or two, and that's so much more convenient than your solution there, because I run a cord into the bag and I hang it next to my bed. And
why is that more convenient than my headset that I just sit on the table
for an office use, for work use? But I'm using the headset at 3 a.m. to dictate an article into a website that's on my ceiling.
But wait, why can't I just pick it up and walk to where I'm going? I'm really confused at the inconvenience. It doesn't matter, right?
Okay, well, I mean, like you're making an assumption that I've left it there charging when I want to go use it in the bed. The typical, I want to say, 30% of the time, the headset is dead because I did not leave it on the charging station in the other room. So I'm already going to run a USB-C cord to where I'm laying in bed in order to charge the thing up. Like, why not just put the USB-C cord everywhere, right? Like I have USB-C cords everywhere in my house to run into a headset, and charge it at every location.
You can keep it on USB-C, yeah. I mean, I'm just arguing against the idea that like you're going to go grab your Quest and it's going to be dead. Like keep it on a charger. It doesn't matter what that charger is. It can be the contact one. It can be the USB-C one. It can be whatever you want. But
it is good advice. It is good advice to keep it on the charger, but it's just not reality that most people train themselves to do that reliably. And what I'm saying is, if you keeping it on the charger in the office, you're keeping it further away from you when you go into other rooms of the house.
Maybe this is a UK versus US size thing. My apartment is not big enough that I wouldn't ever be more than 10 steps away.
Fair. Okay, yeah.
So maybe that's the issue. But I guess if your house is huge, that's an issue. But again, for me, I don't understand why this is different than like a Nintendo Switch, for example, where it stays in the little dock, right? It comes with the dock. You leave your Switch in the dock. You pick it up to use it, and then where do you put it when you're finished with it? In the dock, right?
What a fascinating example of the modes that you have on the Switch, right? Like, and you're speaking to the So I have 2 docks, right? I have a dock at my TV in one room and a dock at my TV in the other room, and that's the only way I can have handheld in both rooms or TV in both rooms, is to have dual docks. Those docks are pretty much like the USB-C cords that I'm running to my Quest in order to keep this thing going. with me wherever I am. And it's like, yeah, docks are helpful, and I use it from time to time, but I think I end up using the cords more is where I'm going with this. And I use, like, I would rather this USB cord or I have right here, I would unplug it from there, hang a battery pack on my side, and then walk around the whole house in mixed reality without being tethered to this physical location.
Sure, yeah, you can use batteries and things like that. Yeah, those are interesting solutions as well. Um, for sure. Okay, let's talk about this Motorola topic for all three people who own a Motorola phone. Yeah, so if you own a Motorola phone, which apparently Motorola has 5% market share, to be fair, they do have a quite high market share in budget phones. So if you're someone who either just doesn't want to spend a lot of money on a smartphone, or you can't spend a lot of money on a smartphone for like practical financial reasons, I have heard from people who do have Motorola phones, and they say they can get a $150, $200 Motorola Android phone that feels to them for their use cases, which are maybe light on a smartphone, like 2/3 as good as owning a high-end phone, right? You'd be surprised if you look at the specs of these things. It's pretty crazy these days what you can get in a $150, $200 Android phone. It like you're talking about like a same full resolution, 120 hertz OLED display, double cameras, etc., etc., thin bezels. Smartphones, you can tell that smartphones have plateaued because that's a thing, right? Like it's unthinkable in this industry that you would get a $200 headset that would feel roughly kind of the same thing as a $1,000 headset. It's not even, that just doesn't make sense. But phones are there anyway. That context out of the way. They have essentially launched a Horizon OS app for Quest 3 and 3S that lets you see and use your phone wirelessly inside VR. And this runs as a panel app, so you can have it open inside VR or mixed reality applications that you're using. And there's kind of two modes to this. In one, you can just stream one individual app at the same time. And in the other, you use this thing called mobile desktop, where you actually have multiple mobile apps open. So it's not actually just like basic screen mirroring from your phone. It's actually a lot more advanced than that. And that's maybe why they've made it only for Motorola phones. They've probably had to do some like OS specific stuff there. So in this desktop mode, you're literally, oh, I think.
Did I get disappeared out of the studio too? Let me know if you can still see me out there in the audience. Looks like we lost David, and I need my feedback from the outside world to find out whether I'm being seen right now or whether I need to restart my headset. Ooh, poof.
My bad.
You're there, Ian.
Yeah.
David melted. David's back. Oh my gosh. One of the things I love in our audience, David, I don't know if you saw it yet. I saw someone tell Arlen, I can't remember who told Arlen, that the opening of our show discussed the thing that they wanted to see. And like the viewer, Arlen is telling us that they're time traveling, trying to catch up to us, going at 2x speed. But the reader basically communicated over time travel into the past to tell Arlen the beginning of the show is a really fun thing to watch. And so I love that our audience is now learning how to communicate through time travel. David, welcome back to our reality.
That's the time travel stuff's too complicated for me. It never seems to make sense. Thank you to Parmesan for this $10 comment saying, everyone remember to like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you can't just join the channel or the website, just give something. Let's all show them how much we appreciate the work they do. Thank you so much, Parmesan. We really do appreciate that. Just to quickly finish off this Motorola thing. So yeah, it's not just basic screen mirroring is what I was saying. It actually is streaming each app out. So even when your phone isn't actually showing the app, it is being kind of off-screen rendered and brought over wirelessly to this. And I did speak to someone who's actually used this on their Quest 3 with Motorola phone, and they said it actually works really well. And that, it's really cool, specifically this mobile desktop mode where they kind of can actually have multiple of these apps open at the same time. So to be clear, what you see in Horizon OS, this is obviously a conceptual image here. You would see like a large kind of landscape mode panel that you can obviously make as big as you want, and within that you can position all these mobile apps. It also has things like pass-through calls. So if you get a phone call on your phone, you can pick it up in your headset and just continue on in your headset using your VR app while you're on this call in the background, and things like notifications as well. And you can choose whether you want the notifications on or not. So really cool if you have a Motorola phone. Obviously, people would really hope that other phone makers with more market share would do this. I saw a lot of people hoping that Samsung will do it. The big question is like, will Google's Android XR have this kind of for all Android phones by default instead of having to do this kind of specific manufacturer thing? That's always been Meta's biggest issue in this industry, that they do not have this ecosystem advantage. They can't go and do something to an Android phone without the Android phone maker's consent. So, I saw when this was first announced back in October, people were going, why is Meta so crazy to only do this for Motorola? And that's the wrong way around. It's not Meta doing this for Motorola. It's Motorola doing this for Meta. And so if you want this to happen on your Samsung phone, you got to ask Samsung. Now, of course, as I see Ivan pointing out in the comments, there are other ways to do this for any Android phone. You can sideload applications that let you do remote desktop on your phone in a more, for lack of a better word here, primitive way, where it is just kind of screen sharing and control. That is completely possible if you want to sideload to do things like that. You can also use Ian's favorite app that's built into Quest, Meta Quest HDMI link, to just view your phone if you don't want to control. You can use a capture card and USB-C cable to see your phone's output, but that's not the same thing as control. And so, on Vision OS, for example, the Apple Vision Pro's operating system, you can mirror your iPhone, but you can't control your iPhone, right? You have to actually touch the physical touchscreen. What makes this useful, I guess, in a more unique way is that this is phone control. So you can leave your phone over in the corner charging and then still use all of your apps, by either direct touching or pointing and pinching or using the controllers to point and click. And that's kind of the advantage here. But again, for all 5 Motorola phone owners, right, to continue the joke.
Well, it's a good test market for Meta to explore this feature going into the future, to try to use it as a wedge to bring more people online and do this with more places. I'm seeing commenters mention AnyDesk and sideloading this to try to get this functionality today on other devices. And I also want to just say thank you to Parmesan as well for that donation. Really, really means a lot to us to see your support, and just to even see your comment trying to get other people to support us as well means a lot. I appreciated Scratch Winter's comment saying they want an AR phone object, and I did the rotary phone movements here, and I'm trying to think. I don't think I actually ever connected a call using a rotary phone. I've been explained how to dial those numbers on the old phone, but I've never actually used it to dial a number and then, hold it in my ear and say, "Hi, so and so. I'm talking to you on a phone from the last century, a really, really long time ago." But I'm just going to throw this out there that if anyone builds like old classic machinery that you need to pantomime in VR to get the experience of like doing the thing today, I will cover it. And I mean like old things, like, I don't know, wheelbarrows, rotary phones, the printing press.
Right.
The printing press is my favorite one. If someone makes a printing press where you literally have to go through, let's put it in the water here or whatever, let's put it in the ink here, let's smash it together. I will cover those things, because like that's how kids in the future are going to learn how these objects worked in the past.
You can imagine a virtual museum of classic technology, retro technology, and you go through the museum and you use all of these things. I mean, one of the fascinating things here, ever so slightly off topic, but is that we still use these old objects as the icons for our digital things, right? So, you have that phone there, but I actually heard from a primary school teacher, you would call it elementary school teacher in the United States, that like there are children who don't understand where these icons come from, and they think that this is just an arbitrary thing. And then when they're asked about it and they're asked to think, why do you think it's that shape for all kinds of things, whether it be, the floppy disk icon for saving, they almost have like an existential breakdown of, oh my God, I don't know why it is. Why would it be that shape? Why that shape for this? And then obviously when it's explained to them, it blows their minds of, wow, this is a physical thing that's been kind of, yeah.
Look at Davin's comment there, and I just want to call out, this overall idea. So Davin's saying someone called a floppy disk a 3D printed save icon, which is just brutal, and I understand it. And yeah, I love these comments overall. I'm going to make a pitch again. I think I've mentioned this book a few times, but go look up Jeremy Bailenson books from Stanford VR. Experience on Demand is one of them, and I can't remember which of the books he did. I think it might be an Experience on Demand, but one of the first chapters is he's walking through a museum of the history of communications, and he did exactly what you just described to describe this museum that we could actually have existing in virtual reality. Yeah, I'll report on that. We need that sort of thing. There's some cool ideas, but it's like I don't need the rotary phone. I don't need the rotary phone 3D object. I need the rotary phone 3D object with all the sound effects attached and the ability to reach in and start turning the dials. All
Yeah.
right, we ready to move on?
The one thing I want to bring up is Denver Miller has pointed out that there is, and we said all this in our article, including about AnyDesk, there is actually an app on the Meta Horizon store for controlling any Android phone called Spatial Phone. I tried it out, and on my network at least, it was very, very laggy and slow. And this is a network where I can use, Steam Link and Virtual Desktop completely fine. So I don't know what's going on there. And some people have had better results with that. It looks like it uses kind of a video calling SDK to connect your headset to your phone. But if that works for you, that's great to hear. But I think um, ideally you get what Apple does, and it creates a point-to-point connection between the headset and the phone. I had some people in the comments here earlier surprised that iPhones can't be controlled from Vision OS because you can on Mac, right? You can mirror your iPhone to your Mac, and it's not just mirroring, it's control. Maybe this will come in Vision OS 3. It does seem like that's something we could see in Vision OS 3, but it's not there right now.
I may be misremembering this, but I think it was Mark Schramm out there that had built so Mark is a developer of many landmark experiences, has been working on a lot of mixed reality things, but he had built like a console with 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 cartridges that had NFC labels on them, or like I don't know if it was NFC or QR codes, but some kind of NFC. And then you took the cartridge and put it into the console, and the console read what the tag was on the cart and pulled the correct ROM from the system. And he had basically a 1-to-1 video game system with you feeling like you're grabbing the actual cart, but you're not, right? You're being tricked. And I'm just want to respond to some of the commenters out there we are on that path.
Yeah, it's interesting to have like intentional skeuomorphism. I saw someone bring up skeuomorphism. The kind of trend of technology over the past 20 years in 2D interfaces has been to go away from skeuomorphism, right? So the original iPhone, you had the Notes app that looked like a journal, and kind of the Clock app that looked like a clock, etc. And then over time, these kind of flat designs took over. So I still, as always, think it's obviously not practical to do this for an everyday task, right? You don't want to have to go and pull out a video to watch a movie each time. It's cool to do, and it's cool to have as an option, but obviously, you want rapid interfaces. At the end of the day, most people don't want to play with an interface. They want to perform the task that the interface lets them do. So
that's true, except if I put everything on the wall. If I know where I put the thing on the wall, then I want a wall of 100 items. Right, like I set the location of every single thing, but we're not used to that on web systems, right? We're used to sort by largest, sort by newest.
Sure.
Right. We're not used to putting this here. All we have is that little desktop, and what do we do with the desktop? We trash it really bad, don't we?
Yeah, I remember that the Oculus Rift Home, the Home 2.0 that they killed off a few years ago, had the ability to customize your home, and you could place cartridges for each of your VR games, and you could launch them by putting that cartridge into a virtual console and pressing the button. And
tore down Paradise and put up a parking lot.
You loved it for the first 5 times. It was maybe cool for the 20th time, but by the 50th time, you're just like, I just want to play the game, especially if you're jumping on to play with a friend or something. Like, you want to be, hang on, I'll just go and find which virtual shelf did I put this game on. I think that's the problem for me. It after the 50th time, you don't really want to do it like that anymore. Right?
Techno glitch, bring that back. What we're missing there is we need both, right? On the desktop on your computer. On the desktop on your computer, you've littered all of the icons, but you just go into the menu and hit reorder, right? Like you say sort by whatever or clean up, right? And they all lock to the grid, right? We have nothing like that in interfaces. And in fact, Google Android XR showed the beginning of that to me late last year in their interface, where you could say, hey Google, organize these windows, or hey Gemini, I can't remember what it was, but organize these windows, and the 3 windows set up like that. You need to have both, right? I'm honoring that commenter that yes, and David, you're right. It just get annoying, but like you have Find My for every digital object in your space, right? So you have the best of both worlds. You have the ability to say, where is my tape of, but bring me my tape of Super Mario Brothers, or my cartridge of Super Mario Brothers 3, and boom, it pops up right in your hand. And then I still get the haptic feedback. Because don't get me wrong, David, that haptic feedback of like snapping the cart into the thing is 100% like the reason why I would want to keep playing these games from the 1990s. Like part of the reason I'm playing this game in the first place is so I can have that haptic effect of actually doing the thing that I did back in the 1990s.
Yeah, I mean, I support the people here who are saying, including yourself, that it's good to have the option, right? I do suspect that the majority of people are going to click on the 2D interface and just launch the app as quickly as possible. But again, if people want it, I'm glad that there are people out there that are thinking about this kind of stuff and building it. Let's talk about this next topic here, which is about Meta's top hardware priority. So, according to Bloomberg's Mark Gurman, who has revealed many details of this upcoming product, the smart glasses with a HUD, codenamed Hypernova, Meta is now heavily focused on trying to ship these things in October. And that according to Gurman, there is a slight risk of it being delayed. And thus, Meta managers have told employees to accelerate their work, including in some cases, working over the weekends. So they really want to ship this thing in October. I think they want to be the first big company to it. There are small companies out there, even Realities, for example, that have like monochrome HUD glasses, and there are smaller companies, Chinese companies. But I think like Meta wants to be the first kind of major tech company to come out there with smart glasses with a HUD. I guess with the massive caveat that people always bring up when we talk about smart glasses with a HUD, that Google Glass did it a decade ago. And so, I understand that in some senses, but in other senses, I feel like we over-index on Google Glass far too much in this industry. Google Glass failed because it looked like a Borg implant. It did not look like a pair of normal glasses. It looked really weird and dorky and nerdy. It came out at a time before the modern wave of everyone's an influencer, everyone's recording a TikTok, everyone's posting a Snapchat story all the time. It came out kind of before that really was a huge element across society. And there are kind of so many different reasons that, there was not the multimodal AI that we have today that I understand you don't use, but for many people is a selling feature for smart glasses. There are also just like a bunch of reasons the compute you could put in those glasses wasn't good enough for a lot of the tasks that may be coming up today. The battery life wouldn't have been the same. And again, the fundamental thing for me is it didn't look like glasses at all. It had this really weird kind of like prism thing sticking out of it. And of course, the really interesting part of these Hypernova glasses from Meta that they're apparently crunching to ship in October is that they will reportedly be controlled by that SEMG neural wristband. So even when you have your hands in your jacket pocket, you can use like micro gestures with your fingers to control the interface, meaning that you don't need to use AI to control things. You don't need to awkwardly swipe on the side of the glasses, which is one of the worst control methods, I think, if you're trying to actually swipe on the side of a pair of glasses you're wearing. That's going to be really interesting to see. So I guess it just shows you like what's happening in Meta. To be clear, this image is just like the generic, Reality Labs staffers image. This is anything specific to this. But it's very, very clear like what Meta's biggest priority this year. We're not going to see a new Quest headset this year. I will eat my hat if I'm wrong about that in terms of a first party Quest headset. But what we are seeing is these smart glasses with a HUD that take the idea of the Ray-Ban glasses, add a radically different neural wristband control method, add a small display in one eye, and reportedly hike the price up to on the range of $1,300.
Yeah, the price, all these things are so many changing parts. The wristband is the most interesting piece to me. I think I saw Bosworth respond to someone on his last AMA saying that the wristband is independent. They work on their own, and I
Well, that was
remember.
the question about that was, does it require eye tracking?
Oh, okay. Sorry, that was okay. I thought it was implied that it was an independent product, or is it going to be paired only to the glasses, or are we going to be using them in VR?
I think at first it's going to be for the glasses, but it's clear that probably in the long term they want to make this an independent input device. But at first, I would imagine this is going to be for the glasses, right?
It's madness to me because I am so excited for the wristbands to be used with my VR headset. It feels like a match made in heaven, and this is a good time. I think Arlen, based on his reports as he's been updating us, as he's been time traveling up to the present, I think he's about 2 minutes from joining us back in present day at 1-to-1 speed. So welcome Arlen back to present day from his time travel journey through time. We've talked about this hypothetical game we want out of Meta. We talked about it with Camouflage Live on our show. And Arlen was the inventor of this idea with us. Deadpool and Wolverine. This idea that one person could be shooting guns with one with controllers in their hands, and the other person could be Wolverine with these wristbands providing haptic feedback as the blades come out of your knuckles. I want it. I want it, but desperately, and it feels like we could have that within a couple of years. With some focused development.
Yeah, I don't see a reason why they wouldn't eventually bring it to Quest as well. I guess it's not as necessary on Quest because the idea is that like these glasses aren't doing hand tracking. So to track gestures at all, you need to use this neural wristband. And if you don't know what we're talking about when we keep saying neural wristband, it basically is this device that goes around your wrist that senses the muscle activations of the electrical signals coming from your brain to your fingers. And so based on that, without having any tracking cameras, even if you had your hands in your pocket, even if your hand was under a desk or under a pillow, it will actually be able to sense the movement of your fingers. And so for this product, it's going to be a first generation iteration of that. So it'll likely be for very simple things like, just clicking like this and maybe swiping from side to side by using your thumb on the side of your index finger. But in future, with higher fidelity, future versions of this wristband, Meta has shown off research that it wants to be able to do precise, detailed per finger tracking that would even allow things like using a keyboard if you had two of them on each wrist, using a virtual keyboard and perfectly tracking your fingers. There's all kind of crazy ideas of how this technology could evolve, including, like having a thumbstick that is not there but is so precise, far more precise than camera-based hand tracking, that you could control interface in the same way that you use a mouse to use tiny movements to control something very precise when you're using your PC. You could even literally emulate a mouse by just putting your hand like this on a table. So again, at first we expect this to be a very simple product. It'll just be swiping through this interface. This was a notional smart glasses with a HUD interface Meta showed a few years ago. Don't expect it to look exactly like this, but you can imagine tapping on this notification, for example, or swiping it away by just using your fingers. And I just saw one comment here I want to address from Ivan saying, have they announced the price of the new glasses? To be clear, Meta has not formally announced that they are releasing smart glasses with a HUD. But we have seen reports from Bloomberg, The Verge, The Information, The Financial Times, and others, all respected outlets that are all saying this is going to happen. And they've strongly hinted at it, right? Like they have hinted at it to the point that they've essentially confirmed it, right? Like people in interviews ask either Mark Zuckerberg or Andrew Bosworth, like, oh, is your next product going to be AR glasses? And they go, well, AR glasses are a few years away, but you could imagine in the meantime having simpler glasses that have like a smaller, they've even said things like 20 to 30 degree field of view HUD that you use for certain things. They've essentially like said it, but they haven't explicitly said it. So I would be very shocked if they aren't releasing this thing in the next year, right? Assuming it might say it gets delayed a few months. It seems like it's going to happen.
Yeah, a lot of discussion about the future of the gaming line at Meta and what that looks like. People discussing the future of controllers as pack-in devices and whether wearables will supplant those or whether there will always be a controller line. We're due for the headset from Valve. We want that to arrive. And we're hearing some interesting things suggested about the controllers for that device. we've got that. There's so many different things happening here simultaneously that it is. We thank you for tuning into Upload VR as we unfold this for you. Just a shout out to all of our commenters, our incredible community out there responding to each other. We try to respond as much as we can. We incorporate all of these comments into our discussion. We try to address criticisms, comments all over the board with our shows and correct ourselves when we get something wrong. So thank you to our commenters. Hit that like button, share it out. We ready to move on to this next subject yet, David?
Yeah, there's only one last comment I want to bring up from Jonas asking, is there any news on what displays these HUD glasses could have, saying they really don't want a monocular display. Yeah, we've discussed this in past shows. Unfortunately, it does appear, based on all of the reports we've seen so far, that this will be a monocular display. So it'll be in your right eye. And Ian and I have both discussed on previous shows how that's uncomfortable visually, how it's not ideal. Reportedly, according to Bloomberg's Mark Gurman, the same person, they plan to release a monocular version in 2027. So this is codenamed Hypernova. That would be Hypernova 2. And the demo that Google showed of their smart glasses with the HUD at TED, which was conceptual hardware, but it's pretty clear that they do want to bring that to market at some point, perhaps with Samsung as the hardware partner there. That hardware was monocular too. You could literally see it because at certain angles the waveguide would reflect from the camera and you could literally see it clearly there, and it was only in one eye. So it looks like, for better and for worse, that's what we're going to get in this first generation of HUD glasses. It is what Ian and I both remain the most skeptical about, I guess. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's probably what we both think is probably the biggest issue of skepticism around this first generation of HUD glasses. And we'll just have to see later this year how that feels in practice.
Yeah, and that's one of those things, like if it doesn't ship, did the Meta executives wisen up to the fact that it doesn't feel great, no matter how much they try to chase this particular dragon? All right, let's talk about Varjo Teleport. You ready?
Yeah. So this is, if you don't know what Varjo Teleport is, it's a $30 a month photorealistic scene capture service with a VR client on PC VR. So it launched in November and we covered it at the time. For $30 a month, it gives you 15 scans. And so you may ask, like, why is there a cost here? Why is there a limit? You may be aware of Niantic's Scaniverse platform, which lets you do this for free, right? You download the Scaniverse app on your smartphone, you scan a real world location, could be a room, could be some cool place you want on a walk, could be whatever. And then you can go and play it in your headset, right? It was WebXR first for Niantic's, and then it was a standalone Quest 3 app. So why does this one cost money? Well, because Niantic's is processed on your phone, on device. They process the scan using the limited compute of your mobile chipset on your phone, and then they play it back using the mobile chipset of your headset. Varjo is a very high-end solution that is fundamentally designed for professionals that does neither of those things. They process these scans on high-end cloud GPUs, and then you play it back, you walk around it, you experience the scene on a PC VR client. So this person using a Quest 3 here, to be crystal clear, is using either virtual desktop, Steam Link, whatever, to access their PC, which is what's actually doing the playback of the scan. So the difference here in Varjo Teleport 2.0, the news here is two things. Firstly, they've released a free plan, so you get 5 scans for free. Though unlike the paid plan, you can't export that as a PLY. You have to keep within Varjo's own infrastructure here. If you do pay, you can export that as a PLY and go use it in your own Unity or Unreal app, which is really cool, right? You can bring a real world location into your Unity or Unreal app. That's pretty crazy. The other difference is that they've improved the quality even more. So the quality of Varjo Teleport was already far beyond Niantic Scaniverse. I know a lot of our commenters tried the Niantic thing and said, the quality is just not good enough. And yeah, to be fair to Niantic, it's free. Okay, it's free. But if you want to really scan a real world location and you have a PC that can run VR, you've got your high-end NVIDIA card or whatever, this is the way to do it with Varjo Teleport. There are open source tools you can use to do this yourself, but if you don't want to go and do, run through all of this open source software and do this processing on your GPU, which will take either, between something like 4 and 24 hours, depending on the size of the scene. A Varjo Teleport is an end-to-end commercial service to just make it really simple. You either use the phone scan and you walk around for 10 minutes or so, or you capture with your drone or DSLR and put all the photos you took into the system, and then they kind of handle it for you. So with 2.0, they say the quality is so good that it actually matches high-end photogrammetry. And I think I forgot to mention at the start, but all of this, Varjo Teleport and Niantic Scaniverse, these services are using Gaussian splatting. So this is a relatively new technique that leverages advances in machine learning to kind of train a high quality output given a sequence of image views. And that's what makes all of this possible. It's what makes some of the other things we've seen possible, like Meta's Horizon Hyperscape demo. And speaking of that, Meta has said that they plan to let you scan your own Horizon Hyperscapes using your phone, but they don't have a timeline for that. They haven't said if it's going to be free. So this is obviously something that is like seeing a lot of interest from these companies. I've said before in this podcast, Gaussian splatting is to real world 3D capture what large language models are to chatbots. Like chatbots before LLMs, it just wasn't practical in any sense. The kind of real world scanning as a consumer without a lot of manual effort, was not a practical thing before Gaussian splatting. Now it is. And so, yeah, you should go and try out the 5 free scans on Varjo Teleport 2.0. If you enjoy it, you should, I guess, if you want to use it, subscribe. I've tried some of these out in terms of the quality of them, and it is just so far beyond the Niantic system at the cost of $30 a month.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. I'm seeing a lot of interesting comments out there covering different parts of this. Where was the comment? Davin talking about some of our previous stuff. I'd argue that Microsoft pulled Windows mixed reality to admit defeat and let Meta handle the XR side of things to become the software on top of whatever the major XR platforms are. I think the death of Skype is probably one shoe dropping. The second shoe to drop would be the WhatsApp app becoming the core messaging platform inside of Windows. When you do that, you have the end game there. And what I would love to know is if there is a data sharing agreement between Microsoft and if this comes to pass, my theory comes to pass, I would like to know if there's a data sharing agreement between Microsoft and Meta over the contents of messages that helps people train their AIs based on the contents of messages passing through WhatsApp on Windows. So that's a whole lot of theories. We'll see if it comes to pass, but it goes exactly to what you're saying, Davin, of this alliance happening between Meta and Microsoft in order to lock together their two systems. We've got Xbox there that is a natural subscription program to bundle in with a lot of devices. Lots of wins there for those two companies to pair up. This is why everyone in the world of PC gaming is waiting to see what the follow-up to the Index looks like from Valve. Anything else on this subject before we move on, David?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, it's going to be very fascinating to see what happens on the PC ecosystem for sure. Microsoft does indeed seem like they have heavily partnered with Meta. You did have that Windows 11 integration that's still experimental, and I guess we expect in the coming months for that to be rolled out as the kind of default way to connect your Quest 3 to a PC in a flat screen sense. And yeah, definitely the biggest thing that we are kind of wondering for 2025 across this industry, I think, is what is Valve going to do to enter? But just on this topic, I just kind of want to stop and reflect. Like, this is the stuff that we were talking about years ago as like, I can't wait till this is possible. I'm amazed that this isn't possible. One day you're going to be able to do it. I feel like this doesn't get enough attention. For me, it's crazy. Like, do people realize what this is? Like, you walk around with your iPhone for 10 minutes in a real world space and you get a near photorealistic 3D volumetric 6-DoF capture that you can walk around in VR and using PC VR. Maybe for some people, like they're waiting for this to be standalone, right? Maybe some people are saying, I'll care when it's the quality of this, but on standalone, maybe Meta's Horizon Hyperscape pulls that off, although technically they're using cloud streaming. So I don't know if you can call that standalone, but still you can use it, right? But I think for now, like it is remarkable. There are use cases that this opens up for enterprise specifically, for doing surveys of things, for real estate. it's not that you couldn't capture a real world scene before, to be clear. There were techniques like photogrammetry, but it's that it took, hiring a team or at least one person capturing very specific photos, going through a kind of cleaning pipeline that would either take, if you're just a company that wants to commission someone, days or weeks, versus you do this yourself. And like the Gaussian splatting has huge advantages over photogrammetry as well. Photogrammetry, the lighting is baked in, right? You're kind of, it's like a picture. The lighting is exactly as it was when you took these photos, and so all the reflections of things on surfaces, it's as if you're in one moment with photogrammetry. With Gaussian splatting, the crazy thing is that like that's not the case. You have dynamic lighting. You walk around and the way that this reflects off the sun is captured, and that's just it's almost counterintuitive that that's even possible, right? But I guess it's just when you kind of the advancements in neural networks recently to kind of train these Gaussian splats are just producing pretty mind blowing results. And like again, really go and try this out. Again, especially now the fact they have the kind of 5 free scans. I think this is pretty crazy stuff, and I'm surprised it didn't get more attention and isn't getting more attention in general.
I don't know. I don't know if I want to go too down my own rabbit hole here, but have you viewed any of these as a dollhouse diorama scale? Like, what does it look like to look at these at that scale? Is it still compelling to look at them before you go one to one? Like what I want is like a tray where I look through dozens of them, and then I pick one and go full scale out of it. And I'm wondering if you've seen anything like that, and if they're still compelling in that little format.
Yeah, that's a good point. I haven't seen any Gaussian splats at that scale. I think maybe the Niantic ones show them, but they're not super high quality and they don't really capture the background. I've only tried this at 1-to-1 scale. But again, if you pay the subscription here, you can export it as a PLY file, and then you can bring that into Unity and build this yourself. And, I actually haven't even tried the non VR version of this. So like when you capture these, Varjo will let you like watch, like preview them in the iPhone app and on the web. But I really only cared about VR, so they have this teleport PC VR software that you can use with any OpenXR headset. But it's an interesting idea. I think like because of how this works, it's going to look weird on the edges. It's going to look like kind of very kind of like splayed out on the edges. It's more designed to put you in the center and kind of in an area. And as you get to the edges, it kind of reality fades out in this really weird kind of way. So I don't know if it would be super compelling for like that. It wouldn't be how you capture like an interior and put it like that, but definitely try it out.
So I have you're gonna have to entertain me here as I take us down, yeah, definite rabbit hole. Have you ever experienced this studio at diorama scale?
No, I can't say I have. No, well, other than on a desktop, right? That's not the same.
Yeah, I want a volumetric version of the studio for people to enjoy on Apple Vision Pro, where it's literally this room right here inside a volume, and they watch us through the roof.
So I think I like that in some senses, but I think one of the things that makes even simplistic avatars work really well in VR is the 1-to-1 scale. It is the fact that like on every other flat screen device, you're seeing things at the wrong scale. Like you're in front of me right now and you're moving like you're really moving, and you're at a roughly the same scale that a human being would be. And that does make it feel like I'm actually sitting across from someone in a way that it doesn't feel like if you're looking at a person, right? It's even if you're on an airplane and you're coming into land or you're just taking off and you're looking down at the ground, when you see the little town and cars at diorama scale, you don't even really connect those are real things, right? There's brain isn't designed to see these things at this scale. Our brains are fundamentally designed to like see human beings at 1-to-1 scale. There is no scenario, unless I'm missing something here, there's no scenario in the wild where we would have ever seen a human being at anything other than 1-to-1 scale. And so that's the problem. You don't connect it as like this is an actual, entity, an agent, a human in any sense.
Well, wait a second on that. Imagine you're on a mountaintop and you're looking down at a lake and you're seeing a whole bunch of little people running around the lake out in the distance. Like they're hundreds, they're 2 miles away over there. And what you're watching are little ants do all of their behaviors outside over by the lake. That's actually super compelling in the real world to have that kind of distance interaction viewing someone at that little itty bitty tiny scale. Like I get what you're saying about 1-to-1 and value, but it would be 1-to-1 for you and me in here, but it would be there could be a whole persona FaceTime chat group out there together, watching us on their table, right? Like
Yeah. If you
we're all the subject of conversation on the dining room table in between them.
Sure. I just think it would also be super compelling to be like sitting over there and kind of looking at us a one-to-one scale. But an option would be great. I'm seeing people in here bring up examples of what you're asking about. Jonas is saying that miniature Gaussian splats are super cute and that they're WebGL examples you can watch in the browser on a Quest. Andrew Tech is saying that construction in Horizon Worlds is done from a diorama view. You would enjoy that. Yes, the old InVR tools that are being phased out, they still exist, but Meta's it's deprecated in the sense that they will not be there forever. They are done at diorama scale. That's always been the case. It's actually very cool. I have tried that in Horizon Worlds. It is cool that you switch in. I guess there are tools like Walkabout Mini Golf and Golf Plus where you can become, giant scale.
Well, yeah, no, that's what led me to this, right? Imagine only God mode for Walkabout Mini Golf launching on Apple Vision Pro, right? You only can view the courses
But why
as a
only?
volume. You don't play the game except on your phone, and you can still log into the world, that same world that's floating over there from your phone. But you get to just have the volume sitting over there and see all the players over there on the golf course as you look over at them, and then, oh yeah, I'm going to go golfing, or I'm going to do the move on my phone right here, or have my phone mirroring in a giant display. But I would love that. Let's take this one step further. Google, if anyone Android XR is listening, and this is based on a comment that was left out there. If you could integrate Google, we're already using YouTube, right? If we could integrate it so that the tips that we're given occasionally, the super chats, are dropped from the ceiling like actual dollars, it would feel like they're feeding the fish. It would the people out there would feel like they're feeding us
really
with their
interesting.
little.
You could do that with the YouTube API, right? I assume the YouTube API supports things like that.
All right, I've distracted us enough, David. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I mean, I get it. It's an interesting question. I think for me, it's more compelling if you're trying to be in a virtual experience with people to be at one-to-one scale. But I understand why people want a diorama, and I think a choice is the best, right? Like there are certain situations where it's a diorama is ideal, especially when it's like toy-like characters and things like that. But yeah.
All right, let's talk about the Lowe's feature that you can design your kitchen with the Apple Vision Pro. This is a really cool idea.
I mean, I guess I would ask you, I don't really know what Lowe's is. I understand from the context here that it's a place you go to buy a kitchen, but it's not.
Do you know what a Home Depot is?
Yeah, I know what that is, yeah.
It's not Home Depot, right?
Sure.
The other one.
Sure. But I guess, the news here is that they now let people book a 45-minute demo in either their Austin or Bay Area stores where they go in and use Lowe's Style Studio on Apple Vision Pro. So this Vision OS app has actually been around since launch, Lowe's Style Studio, and it lets you customize the colors, materials, styles, and furniture of a highly realistic virtual kitchen's sinks, cabinets, ranges, countertops, flooring, and more at one-to-one scale. So you're really there like you're in the kitchen. And it's actually really high quality. This is a really high quality rendering. This is one of the few apps that actually strains the Vision Pro. This is one of the few times I've ever noticed the Vision Pro kind of struggle with frame rate and performance. But it is because these are like really high quality 3D models. These are the kind of 3D models that like you would normally use in like a pre-rendered CGI thing. And it's being done in real time, obviously, because you can customize everything. And then you can sync your design to the Lowe's iPhone app to purchase, or you can go to the web and from this experience, or you can like send it to a store and go and book a consultation. So this is not just some demo. This is an actual way that people can customize and buy their kitchen. The kitchen of their dreams, I guess, is how they would probably brand it. They did trial this, as James has just brought up, a year ago at a few Lowe's locations in New Jersey. They had a really early trial, but it wasn't like a public thing that you booked as any kind of customer. It was a trial run kind of thing, and that's where they did their learnings for this. And so it's now actually deployed in Austin, Texas, and in 8 of the Bay Area Lowe's. And yeah, I think this is really interesting stuff. So obviously most people don't have a Vision Pro, but they can go into the store and just use this to design their own kitchen. It's mirrored to an iPad app, so they're encouraged to bring their friends, their family, their installer if they're using their own installer, and they can all kind of join in. And, they've obviously shown customer testimonials and kind of reactions, and it seems that people are really, really responding positively to this. And, we've said this before many times on this show, but, when it comes to interior design of all kinds and architecture, even at exterior scales, VR and AR and MR, whatever you want to call it, just makes perfect sense, right? If you are wanting to design, the interior of your home, you want this to look a certain way, why would you have to kind of imagine what it looks like, or, come up with some bad sketch, or kind of go in the store and kind of look and think, how would that look in my living room? What a completely different way to do it. What a much better way to do it than to literally be able to just throw these virtual objects into your living room, for example. And in this case, it's an entire kitchen, right? It's not like spatially aware. You're not changing your own kitchen. It is a VR kitchen. But it's still a really interesting way, because people that are using this, the target market is people who are buying a whole new kitchen, right?
It's funny to think, okay, so you've got companies like Tesla and so many others all pitching these humanoid robots that aren't necessarily as efficient as a robot could be, because they're trying to look human and get there. But imagine this flow ultimately where it goes. You combine these two last stories that we've got. You come into a Lowe's with a scan of your kitchen, and then you configure it on a device like this with all of the devices at Lowe's that you're buying, and then you leave the Lowe's and wait for robots or humans to come into your home and put everything exactly as you saw it in the store, right? They're going to put it and install it for you exactly as you had it configured in the store, and you're done here, right? That is the end goal here, isn't it?
Well, I think the end goal is that by then people will just have their own home headsets. And, just like some stores used smartphones before people had them to do certain kind of things, eventually the idea is that you will pick up your own headset, and that this will it'll be possible to run things of this fidelity on much lower cost headsets. That the gaze and pinch input system that makes it so easy to move things and kind of configure what you want will be available in low cost headsets. And so, yeah, the end goal is you put on your own headset or glasses, you walk into your kitchen, and then you do this in front of you and design it looking at your actual kitchen. And then you press some buttons, and either a human or a robot comes and brings it and installs it for you.
Well, it's fascinating to think about all the changes in retail that come following that, right? Like, how many people have gotten in the habit of buying absolute trash off of Amazon, right? How many products you looked through all the listings, and you're like, this one looks good. You spent $15 on it, $20 on it. It arrives, and you realize it's absolute trash. And you got to decide, am I going to go through the effort of returning the thing? It's only $20. Like it's usually go get your refund, but it's this whole different flow. What you're describing, David, is like a situation where I'm investing hundreds or thousands of dollars before the thing actually comes into my home. And what happens if it gets into my home and then it's not the right fit? Like there's someone messed up. There's a scan glitch. There's something behind the wall that somehow prevents this installation. How do retailers out there, the people who sell you products, fix this for you? Like it's a completely different situation.
I mean, there are certainly teething issues there that you point out that are very valid. Again, you would hope that they would have a guarantee that, the 3D models of these things are at 1-to-1 scale. That they would say, maybe you do have a human installer that comes and checks, and they have their own AR glasses or mixed reality headset on, and they go around and mark everything out and make sure it's okay. There are obviously teething issues here, and this is still very early days. In general, this is still very early days for this entire industry. These are still ideas that, yes, they're not new, but the technology is only just getting good enough to make these things practical, right? That you can do this on a standalone headset without having to have, these Lowe's employees trying to configure Steam VR on a gaming PC, like if you wanted to do this 10 years ago. The fact that you can just put this on someone's head and mirror it to the iPad, and, they have all the MDM systems that they can just launch into one app. The fact that all that's doable is a moment where you can see these companies start to really practically deploy this at scale in stores. And over time, when the cost comes down, you can see that being expanded even more. And I'm interested to see like what happens as a result of this. How many people really do, as you say, get to the end result of having the kitchen they wanted, and there weren't these issues.
Yeah, so I don't know if we've got Kyle out there in the audience, but if you're out there, speak up, Kyle. And what's remarkable about this is like people like Kyle were messing around with these types of ideas on AR-based headsets a decade ago. And what's remarkable about that is those AR-based headsets were in the same ballpark of price as the Vision Pro. So 2,500 bucks, 3,000 bucks, 3,500 bucks, like those were the prices of those AR headsets that you would go and do a lot of these things. But what David and I have just done on these last few weeks with this show and my reporting overall, I reported on walkable scale VR where you can configure a home walking around inside of it. You talked about Porsches and configuring a Porsche in your home and getting like a quote that you take to a dealer, right? And now we're talking about kitchens, right? There's a theme here, and the theme is that the market is ready for these types of interactions. We have crossed a threshold that was not crossed a decade ago when people like Kyle were messing with these things on a different class of device. These things only work. This flow only works because you've got 110 degrees field of view or so. You've got amazing room scanning technologies with really, really solid computer vision. You have the
Yeah.
person who's right in front of you being popped into your experience with people detection so that even though you're doing all these other things with the headset, you're still connecting to the person sat right in front of you. All these things needed to have been in place for the ideas of 10 years ago to be possible over the next 10 years.
Yeah, for sure. And the compute as well is a huge thing, right? Having like an M2 chipset that's running in a standalone headset is crazy. I see some people bringing up, the M5 chip will allow them to do this without the performance issues and go even higher resolution and even more realistic. And that's very true. We do expect that M5 chipset to be there. And I think, not to start another VR download drinking game topic, but the field of view thing really is why that was the case, right? Like all these ideas from Magic Leap and HoloLens that tried these things 10 years ago, it was one of the greatest cases of the emperor having no clothes in the history of technology. Like the field of view was atrocious. If you're trying to do something like this, you would see one part of one cabinet and then you'd look at the top of the fridge and come down and see the rest of the fridge. It was just like,
and then back up against the wall and
yeah,
smash your head against the wall to try to give yourself the
yeah,
concept of what this would look like a decade from now in these headsets.
yeah, 100%. And it just was one of those things where, like I've said this before, but the first time I tried a HoloLens, I thought it was broken but it wasn't. It was just like the field of view was that bad that I thought, it is like, where did the hype from this come? How did they do this? How did they create the kind of hype that this was what it is based on how the actual field of view is? It was astonishing. And so I think like that did set this issue where you've got so many people discussing, well, these ideas were there 10 years ago. Like, yeah, they were, but the hardware was awful. It couldn't do it properly. And you put it on, it was like, okay, that's kind of a cool demo. Wow, I'm seeing something through a transparent glass, but no one ever has stopped to think, is like, this is so bad that it's not
Well,
good enough. And so now we are finally in this era where you're getting these headsets that are capable. The technology is catching up to the dreams. And that's really a theme of this industry in 2025 that we are covering, that we're tracking. There are so many areas that Ian's just brought up, multiple of them there. The technology is catching up to the dreams. And that's a real trend.
Yep, we've got two more stories here to cover out, and I think we'll probably end at maybe the 2 hour and 10 minute mark here. And I need to get going here as soon as I can. But I like LL's comment here saying they sold the military on a $20 billion contract. That would be the U.S. military on a $20 billion contract based on those old 10-year-old ideas, the HoloLens type architecture of AR glasses. Again, the theme of our reporting. David is on the ball with a big report out there breaking down Palmer Luckey's Anduril, taking that contract away from Microsoft, and you have the father of the Oculus Rift now supplying the U.S. military with head-mounted displays that aren't architected necessarily that same way. Right there, he's gonna have a different premise, a different starting point for the optical architecture here.
Yeah, we'll be very interested to see what that Anduril IVAS looks like. I want to just quickly show two screenshots of that Porsche app you were talking about. We didn't really have this as a topic, but I did try it out. It's an app for Apple Vision Pro that lets you like customize and then go through to the web to buy or save to your Apple Wallet to bring into a store this new limited edition $250,000 Porsche car, Porsche, however you pronounce it. I don't know or care. You can customize the colors. It's very highly realistic. Weirdly, it seemed like it's not 1-to-1 scale though. It's really big, but it feels like it's maybe like 2/3 scale, somewhere between half and 2/3. It's a really bizarre app in how the UX works. You can go read my article on uploadvr.com for details. And the weirdest part of all is that this has like a photorealistic modeled interior, including like the CarPlay interfaces on there and all the little dials, but you can't see it. You can't get inside. If you stick your head through the window or even close to the window, you'll get this message, sorry, that's too close, and the car will disappear into invisibility until you turn away. So what a strange app. And it has all this stuff about, going through like these 2D videos of the designer's process. It seems not to insult like artsy fartsy people, but it's very, very pretentious in how it's presented. And the fact that you can't sit in the damn car is crazy to me. Like, add a mode where you can sit in the $250,000 car that you've 3D modeled painstakingly. Let me sit in the damn thing.
Well, what's funny? That's really interesting, David. And I'm wondering if they're doing the size thing in order to avoid depth conflicts of the model.
So it's still so big that it's not fitting in my room. Remember, I'm in the UK where all of our houses are on average.
How many Porsche buyers are in the UK?
No, 100%. No, I'm not. Again, you were right to point out when I first brought this up to you that that's not a valid complaint for anyone who's in the market for a $250,000 car. I'm just pointing out that like it doesn't fit in my room, so it does kind of awkwardly have this depth conflict, and yet it still isn't 1-to-1 scale. And I know that because I looked up the length of this car and I put it next to my bed, which I know the length of, and I even double checked with a ruler and made sure, a measuring tape, and made sure it's not 1-to-1 scale, but it's close, which is weird. I feel like maybe that was just a glitch, or maybe it's because the room I'm in, it decides not to be 1-to-1, and maybe they have a minimum scale. Maybe that's the minimum. I don't know. I guess I'm not gonna take this anywhere that can be big enough to. I can't think of anywhere I could go that I wouldn't. Yeah, maybe you can try it out if you know somewhere that you would have the size to put an entire virtual Porsche. And if anyone in the comments is in the market for a 911 limited edition 1970s style Porsche for $250,000, and you like the idea of using Apple Vision Pro to customize and buy it, let us know.
So, I'm gonna take us off topic here, but I got to talk about Cubic Layer, the one we'll talk about soon.
Maybe
the article
isn't it next week? You're gonna have the article.
It is. I'll talk about, but I want to talk about observing lighting changes outdoors. Okay, that's where I'm going to bring up the Cubic Layer. I walked around a tree while making voxels around the tree, and I walked from the shade to the light, and I watched the voxels that I just made change from darkness to light. What you're describing here is I would love to take the 1-to-1 model here, put it out on the street right in front of my home, take a chair, put it where the driver's seat is, and then go and sit and configure my model at 1-to-1 scale. But the reason I'm bringing that up is I need outdoor lighting to see how this car looks in outdoor lighting, because that's the only lighting it's ever gonna that's how I want to show it off if I'm gonna buy it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's one of the most amazing parts of Vision OS, and there is no other VR system layer or OS that does anything like this. Is that realistic real world lighting, right? Like, you don't get this on Quest, you don't get it on Pico, you don't even get it on Android XR from what we've seen so far, though maybe they do add that in at some point. But the fact that in this shared space, without you as a developer having to do anything, you don't have to handle lighting. You just put in a 3D model and Apple will light it with the realistic lighting of the actual room or outdoor environment you're in, including shadows. It is remarkable. It is one of the things that makes the shared space that we're always ranting about in Vision OS incredible. It truly is. The Vision OS is the made for XR operating system that we've all dreamed about. You can obviously be annoyed that it's currently exclusive to a $3,500 product, but it will not be forever, and we'll keep tracking the story over time of it coming down in price. And this is an example of a 3D model that works really well in that. Even I could see it, like the light reflect from my actual lamp in the room and stuff off the car. But again, I want to speak to whatever person decided to put the most realistic 3D model that anyone has ever probably released of this car and will ever, and not let you go inside it.
Well, I love the commenter that suggest like this flow suggestion is imagine. All right, so there's two commenters who I've created this mental image inside of, and so CJ is saying, breaking news: man hit by car while sitting in a lawn chair on the road. The man appeared to be driving a pretend car. Yeah, I love that. And I'm imagining this idea of you're doing that, right? You're sitting in the street in your lawn chair, surrounded by a car that you're configuring, and you're like, okay, I don't want the leather seats here, or I want red leather seats here, I want a different color here, I want a different steering wheel. You're sitting 1-to-1 in the street in your car. You've done the 360 walk around of the whole car. You've come back to the driver's seat, and you're like, let's pull up my bank account. And it flows up here, and you go purchase, right? $250,000, clink, gone out of my bank account, right? And now I get a little unlock symbol on the app that lets me take a selfie in my virtual car and go, I just got my new car. But the feature doesn't unlock to take the selfie inside the configurator app until I spend the $250K.
Yeah, maybe that's why they don't want to let you out. They want you to actually buy it. Yeah, let's move on to our penultimate topic, which is the Quest Passthrough API becoming a public feature. So context here is that this launched about 6 weeks ago as an experimental feature, and that meant that developers could play with it. They could also, release APKs with it. They could send you it on Google Drive, or they could upload it to SideQuest and you could sideload it. But until this week, they couldn't actually ship this in their apps on the Meta Horizon store, which is the new name for the Quest store. So that's the change here. They can actually now ship with the camera pass-through API. And if you don't know what that is, it's the API that lets developers actually have raw access to those color cameras on the front of your headset, and they can use that to run custom computer vision tasks and do all kinds of things, right? This could be anything from, scanning and tracking QR codes, which you could use to like align a virtual board game easily or something. You could detect physical objects for enterprise guide experiences. You can integrate the visual multimodal AI of cloud-based services like ChatGPT or Gemini, right? You could build that yourself in an application. The only limit here is what developers are able to run in real time on the XR2 Gen 2 chipset performantly, or which cloud-hosted image analysis model they're willing to pay for single image analysis. The other important limit, I guess I should say, is that this is 30 frames per second and has a latency of 50 to 60 milliseconds. So this isn't for rapid real-time object tracking. It's for, I guess, less real-time contingent computer vision tasks. But we've gone over this topic many, many times, and we want to just reiterate what we're saying, which is that this is something that some developers have been asking for so many years. This is something that has so enormous potential. These headsets actually gaining the ability for developers to understand the world around them, not just get, a hand tracking skeleton and a scene mesh that shows the shape of your room when it was scanned, not just like a depth map, but actually understand the color in it. And I love this little sample, which is literally a real life color picker, right? So you're in Tilt Brush or Open Brush or whatever in mixed reality, and you go into the color picker, and instead of choosing from a virtual interface, you go and point at something in your actual room and pick the color out of your real room. It's just a good example of that. You also could do things like frosted interfaces. There's a lot of potential here. Something I saw a developer do, and we're going to probably report on some of the interesting initial use cases soon, is using an AI model that converts 2D subject images into 3D objects to let you take pictures like this of 3D objects in your real space and then have them kind of pop out as virtual versions. These are just interesting experiments, but I'm very, very curious to see what the developers build with this now that they can actually ship it.
James, giving a lot of context here on the larger scale. With this, I expect Meta to create a similar light estimation feature for MR apps as Vision OS, or if you're an ambitious machine learning, computer vision dev, you can do it yourself. And then multiple people discussing sort of this overall trend of Meta kind of trying to put all the places in place for their AR glasses initiative over the long term. Um, yeah, and then my question always returns to what do they do? Are they ignoring the right now in favor of that, right? Like I always remember John Carmack's words about what entitlements to this and handing devices to that, and I just want to tear my hair out because none of it matters, right? Like what is the experience today for our users and how does it get improved? This is along that path, regardless of what happens over the long term with this feature. This is a huge, huge upgrade for what's capable on Quest headsets today. What I'm wondering, David, is do you think people are going to cover their homes in QR codes? They're going to take physical objects off the wall and they're going to have QR codes on their walls in the future? Are we going to go back to that Valve room?
No, but I think that will be very important for enterprise. I think even if you ignore all the consumer possible use cases, this is going to be huge for people that are using Quest headsets to build custom applications for businesses. It'll let them do things that they simply couldn't do before. Not just businesses, like organizations like museums, guided tours, and things like that. So at minimum, you're going to get a lot of traction there. At maximum, you're going to allow all kinds of augmentation software that just wasn't possible before. And I see a lot of people suggesting here that developers could essentially use this as a dev kit for AR glasses, right? Like to kind of build for what they will one day be able to launch on eventual AR glasses. And I could see some developers definitely deciding to do that, right? Because a lot of what AR glasses, even glasses that don't have augmented reality, even HUD glasses or simpler smart glasses, if they do get a developer platform, because today the Meta smart glasses do not have a developer platform. This will be something that developers want to build for because at some point you would imagine you're going to get enough compute on these glasses to run applications that are made by developers. But even before that, there's going to be a lot of useful stuff you can do on a mixed reality headset. And there's a lot of ways you could even enhance VR apps by using this too, right?
Yep. The one example is the holodeck that I've talked about multiple times, right? They were using OptiTrack cameras overhead for their system. It was actually quite like laggy, like that you could feel the difference once you actually move to newer anchor systems. And one of the anchor systems that they have over the long term is this one where you've got these big codes up on the wall and it can track your headset based on that, your relative location. Improving this is going to have major, major follow-on effects. Like VR is going to start feeling better to you and you don't realize why. And it's because of these little things being added on at the low level, right? By this feature.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that you need this for is to do cross-platform co-located experiences. So today you can build a co-located Quest app that doesn't need to use markers, right? You can just use the shared spatial anchor system and you can build an experience where two headsets in the same room see the same thing. There are a bunch of apps that do this already, from Demio to laser tag to spatial ops to Trackcraft, which is really, really cool. Actually, it's one of the coolest co-located experiences. You build these little tracks that cars go around in mixed reality together. None of that needs any of this. But if you want to do co-location between headsets, between Quest and Vision Pro, between Quest and Pico, between Quest and future headsets, like a Valve headset, maybe if it's standalone and has mixed reality, you can't do that. These shared spatial anchors are all platform specific. Even, on iOS and iPad, where Apple has their own equivalent of shared experiences in AR with ARKit. That's all within Apple's ecosystem, right? And Vision OS doesn't even have a shared spatial anchor system. So you cannot build automatic co-located experiences on Vision Pro yet. So this is something that will be needed. Now, I say that with Vision Pro as an example. Vision Pro doesn't have this yet, other than for enterprise. You can't access the cameras of an Apple Vision Pro as a developer unless you're an enterprise company that has agreed to very specific terms that means you have to use it internally. So I think that's one of the things that'll be really exciting here when we do get that from Apple, hopefully in Vision OS 3. That's just a guess, though. But for now, this is one of those things where if you asked what would devs do with track controllers when we first saw, the HTC Vive controllers and the Oculus Touch controllers? You wouldn't come up with some of the amazing things developers did come up with eventually. If you ask what will hand tracking be used for, I think developers always kind of exceed our original expectations. And I really, really just want to see what they build with this.
Actual is making a very plain comment that they're having trouble understanding this and where we're going. Is there any way we can break this down in a simpler way for
Sure.
people?
Right. So since they launched headsets like Quest 3, these mixed reality headsets, let developers use Passthrough meaning the view of the real world from the cameras on the front, that's Passthrough, as the background. That's how they could do. They didn't actually get access to that pass-through. From the developer's perspective, it's as if they had an invisible virtual world and just virtual objects. And then underneath that, Meta's system layer fills in the background with the real world pass-through. So that's what has always been available on these mixed reality headsets. But the developers couldn't see that pass-through. So they couldn't do something like scan a QR code. They couldn't do something like track an object or pick out a color from the real world. And the change here, what matters here, this is the thing that has changed here, is that now developers can. They have to request a permission, right? So you launch the app and it says, would you like this app to be able to access your headset's front cameras? And you say yes, and then they get access. So that's the kind of that they can then run computer vision models. And computer vision just means, using advanced algorithms, in some cases handcrafted, in some cases using AI to analyze the visual imagery of a camera to perform a task, right? It could be anything from, like we keep saying, the most simple, obvious use case, tracking a QR code, to any of the other kind of object tracking use cases.
One of my favorite use cases just occurred to me the other day. I go and put a load of laundry in the wash, right? And I look and I'm wearing my headset, right? And I just happen to be wearing my headset as I'm doing this. Throw a load of laundry in the wash, close the door, turn the dial, press the button, and it says 1 hour and 55 minutes left. I need computer vision to take that timer automatically and put it inside my headset as I walk around the rest of my day. I walk away now from the washing machine, and computer vision has automatically set a timer to let me know when my washer is done. So I'm in the other end of the house, and in the corner of my vision or laid somewhere out of sight, I get a little timer letting me know when the washer is done. Bing, 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 wherever I am. It bings in the other side of the house too, right? Like the actual washer bings too, but maybe I don't hear it. So now I'm reminded via my headset to go change the wash over to the dryer, and I move on with my day.
Yeah, I mean, it really is just limited by what kind of computer vision can be run here. So like there are examples we've given before where you could build a mixed reality cooking app, and maybe that's not so practical for you for the current generation of pass-through headsets. But once they get a lot better, pass-through is better and higher resolution and less distorted, and the headsets are lighter and slimmer, maybe that is something that becomes practical, where it literally uses computer vision to analyze where each ingredient, and you see arrows that point where you go. You could imagine IKEA building a mixed reality app to guide you through building the furniture by showing you like a translucent version of the frame. And then as you snap the physical parts into place, it kind of fills up and makes a ding and a tick, right? You can imagine people have shown off crazy ideas like spatial vacuuming, right? Where you vacuum your home and there's a bunch of coins around, like it's a Mario game, and you do things like that. You could gamify real world tasks. You could guide people through repairing things in their home, right? Where you analyze like what am I seeing? What's the issue here? And then show them literal arrows that are pointing at things in the real world, right? Literally like circled red views of here's what you need to grab and put over here. And obviously the integration here of AI and computer vision is where this really becomes magical for these tasks, where none of this would be practical to be completely pre-programmed. And maybe you could argue it might not be reliable if it was entirely just a generic LLM. But if you have something, an LLM that is fine-tuned for a use case that can then generalize within a set of knowledge that it's given, and that leverage computer vision to guide you through things like this. So again, this is going to be one of those things where I think we're going to be surprised by what developers pull off, and I can't wait to see it. And there are already people that are messaging us and emailing us, saying that they have cool things to show, and we're definitely going to keep on top of this.
Hey son, what score did you get mowing the lawn? You can literally ask that question in the future and base the allowance that you grant the kid based on uh, their score mowing the lawn based on the computer vision, right? The computer vision looked at the whole lawn and said, he did about 92%. He got about 92% of the grass cut. So that's, they translates that to a score. Dad looks at the score and goes, man, you got to get it 98% next time. I'm only giving you $5 for this job.
Yeah, this is going to be super, super interesting to see. And you pointed out a use case you were very excited about, like learning instruments. Already there are apps like Piano Vision, but the alignment is kind of manual. Well, they can kind of, use computer vision now to detect the keys and put you in the right place. And again, the compute on these current headsets may be too limited for some of the ideas that we're bringing up today. But we expect that in 18 months or so, roughly like a year and a half, we're going to see a Quest 4 that might have, double the compute and maybe 10 times the NPU for running computer vision tasks and things like that. So, and obviously we all expect, based on the rumors, that Apple may be releasing a Vision Pro successor with an M5 chip that's going to be a massive leap over the M2. So we're going to really be looking at this year's WWDC in June. Does Apple decide that, Google has done it, right? Android XR has this from day one. You can access the pass-through cameras from day one. Meta has it now. It's on the store. Meta is fully giving developers access to the pass-through cameras. The big leftover legacy decision maker here is Apple. They are still holding to only letting large companies do this, enterprise. Will we see that change in Vision OS? I really want to see that in June.
We've got one last subject to cover here. Thank you so much for everyone who's tuned in. Please do hit that like button and leave a comment after the show in our comments and share this link out to other people. Get people watching the VR download. I've talked to a couple of people in our audience out there that are kind of religious about tuning into our show, and thank you for that fandom. Thank you for caring about what we have to say and our efforts to do it fairly, to do it as objectively as we can, as often as we can. And I don't know, when we step outside of that objectivity, like I did earlier in this episode, I make it pretty clear that I'm taking this moment to just speak personally for a minute. We've got our one last subject here, and I'd like to finish it in about 10 minutes here, David, so we can get you out of here and out of the heat. So what do we got?
So this is Meta Reality Labs Q1 revenue declined 6% year over year. And Meta has said that this is due to lower Quest sales. So this is quite a big story because last quarter, in Q4 2024, Meta Reality Labs actually recorded its highest ever revenue. And if you're not familiar, Reality Labs is a division of Meta behind, as Meta would say, metaverse and wearables. So that's Quest, Horizon, Ray-Ban Meta glasses, research and development of AR glasses, the neural wristband, and reportedly they even are starting a robotics division as well, but I don't think that's material yet. That's probably not started yet. So with the launch of Quest 3S, we saw the highest ever quarterly revenue from the Reality Labs division of Meta. But now in Q1 2025, we've seen a slight decrease compared to the same time last year. So you could see they brought in 440 million last Q1 2024. And now this quarter, they brought in 410 million, 412 million. So that's a decrease of 6% year over year. And you always compare these quarters year over year because these things are very much so seasonal, right? Notice that we have here Q4 in green each time, and that's the holiday period. And it's very obvious why the holiday period is always the biggest for these kind of products, right? You're buying them for Christmas, gifting. In winter, you're indoors more. You're spending less time outside. It's not as hot when you put the headsets on. It's an ideal time. So for so many reasons, Q4 is always the biggest quarter. Q1 is usually, for what you can see, either the second or the third biggest quarter. It's been for most of the time the second, and then for this year, it was the kind of third. But that was, a very different time. So the thing is, Meta has described this as being due to lower Meta Quest sales, which were partially offset by increased sales of Ray-Ban Meta AI glasses. That's from Meta CFO Susan Lee. But however, while headset sales decreased, Mark Zuckerberg told investors that Quest is seeing deeper engagement. And as we previously talked about on this podcast, at GDC in March, Meta's director of games revealed that monthly headset usage increased 30% in 2024 compared to 2023. And last year, he said that Quest 3 has higher retention than previous headsets. So, what's really interesting here is that we used to talk about the conventional wisdom in this industry, which was that Meta was seeing, this growth in the Quest 2 era, right, where they were selling lots of headsets, but they were struggling with retention. So there was a while where Meta was selling more headsets and their sales units were going up, but their retention was going down. And now we're in this very new era where it's almost like the opposite is happening, right? Where it's not a dramatic decrease, right? 6% is not crazy, but it is a decrease year over year. It is, and this is, this was a quarter where it was Quest 3 and Quest 2 in the market. This is Quest 3 and Quest 3S on the market. But at the same time, they're reporting they're actually seeing greater retention. And they also said at GDC, to be clear, that this was as of March, there are more people actively using Quest headsets today than ever in the past. So we're at this era where even while sales have gone slightly down year over year in this one quarter, they're still seeing retention. I'm going to be really fascinated to see how much of this is just macro, right? How much is just people are spending less because of the economic concerns. People are, kind of waiting to see what happens with certain global economic situations before spending. How much of this is sort of a general downturn in the gaming industry? How much of this is people saving up for a Switch 2? All of these factors. And does this carry forward to Q2? Do we see Q2 as a year-over-year decrease as well? Or do we see Q2 buck that trend? I don't think we can make too many conclusions about one quarter because, again, this comes after their highest ever. So one quarter on the grand scale of things, when this chart's all the way out here, it could be an anomaly or it could be a trend. That's what we don't know yet. And so we can kind of go into deeper context in a little bit, but essentially at the same time, they've also seen Ray-Ban Meta glasses dramatically increase in sales and retention. So they say the Ray-Ban Meta glasses have tripled in sales in the last year and that they have 4 times as many active users compared to this time last year, and that they plan to heavily invest in smart glasses this year, including scaling the business through new products and marketing and things like that.
So let me give some context here, I guess. Over the weekend, I used my Apple Vision Pro in a cafe. And I played a board game with my partner, handed her my iPhone and screen mirrored that iPhone to my headset. And I ate lunch while playing this board game with her, with both of us able to see the board game at the same time. And by using the Vision Pro in public, it sparked a conversation with the person who was working there, who is a Quest 3 owner and wanted to know if the Vision Pro was worth it. And I said, no, not this gen, maybe next gen. We'll wait for next gen. And he had a very, very shrewd question. And I think it was framed around, do I get a car or a headset? And I have to throw this out. So this is my way of summarizing a bunch of the comments I'm seeing here. Of one of them being, I'm surprised the drop wasn't bigger, given the more macro things happening in the economy. And I think that's a fair thing to ask. And what I want to bring up is this interaction I'm having with in public over VR headsets, because that was a young and hungry person working a job that is hard to do, who enjoys their time on their Mac. They do really, really cool things on their Mac computer, and they want to know what's the creative future for me? How do I do it? And I think that's a real, I think there are more people than this audience gives it credit for out there going, do I buy a VR headset as my future of personal computing? Do I use it as a tool to try to climb up through this world and learn the skills and I need to do the jobs of the future? Or do I go get a car to go drive me to jobs? Which device is going to get me further? Quite literally.
Yeah, I think on a kind of wider response, but still on what you're directly saying, we are still in an era where most people have not tried good, proper VR and MR. And one of the things to come back on a idea we were discussing maybe earlier in the show is that one thing that hasn't changed in 10 years is that the biggest problem with headsets, VR headsets, mixed reality headsets, whatever you want to call them, is how to market them. I still don't think there is an effective way to convey to people how cool and fun and interesting these headsets can be without just sticking one in their head. And I do think that that is a huge challenge for Meta. I think that you see them try every trick in the book to try and market these things. But fundamentally, as we both know, how many dozens of demos do you do where the reaction before and after is just before, I kind of get what this is. Yeah, sure, I'll give it a try. And after, holy shit, I had no idea that it was this good, you know? And I think like one of the biggest problems I think that may be here is what James O'Loughlin just brought up, which is that Meta should have indeed invested in retail. They did these like pop-up stores. They have like one store. But I think if Meta is really, really serious about trying to scale the future of computing, they need to do what Apple does and have a store, right? Like Apple, the greatest asset Apple has, arguably, even beyond its ecosystem, I would argue, is the fact that every new Apple store they build has a side section where they demo Vision Pro. And even the old ones, they kind of retrofit a section. They can show people a headset. And that might not matter today when this is a $3,500 product. But when this is a $2,000 product, when this is a $1,500, $1,200, $1,000, that really matters when you can show people a demo in store. And I think if you did have a Meta store at scale and you were able to show people a high quality demo of Quest 3 and things like that, you're not going to cause an order of magnitude increase. But I think that would be meaningful enough that you could argue that it's something that needs to be there for the long term.
Yep. What I was going to respond there is I don't think the market has dropped to the lowest levels possible for buying physical retailers yet. So there's still time ahead for Meta to go and say, I would like to buy all the Best Buys in the world, and use those as the future of Apple or of Meta retail. And they just need to wait a little bit longer for those prices to come down, right? The longer they wait, the more affordable the real estate will be.
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine each country, I know examples of like high street retailers here who have stores everywhere that end up looking for a buyer at a very low price compared to what you would think, like chump change for a company like Meta. And it is something they're not taking advantage of. James O'Loughlin says, for example, there's no way AR glasses can gain traction without retail. And that's a huge point, right? They want to do this. They want to bring these AR glasses out of the realm of science fiction and into reality. Well, you're going to need to do demos. And more than that, you're going to need to do these prescription, setups and all of these little minor things and figure out the right sizes for people. And they're going to want to choose their style in a store. And Apple's going to be able to do that, right? And you could argue Meta's strategy today is to do that with EssilorLuxottica. You can walk into a Ray-Ban store and do it. But what about the glasses from Meta that aren't from EssilorLuxottica, right? The reports indicate that these HUD glasses are not going to be Ray-Ban branded. Maybe the reports are wrong, but if they're not, then Meta's not going to have that retail presence. So they only have that for this one product line. The Ray-Ban glasses and the Oakley glasses that they're supposed to launch later this year, according to reports. It would make so much more sense to start this now. And maybe it isn't profitable today, right? Maybe it isn't, but nor is Reality Labs, right? Nor is any of this today. It seems so essential, and it's bizarre that they don't do that.
Yeah, I think it's the end of our show here, and I want to say thank you to all of our audience. And in particular, I love Onikazi out there saying that they just played Raptor Cliffs over in Walkabout while listening to our show in here. And that's just a reminder there that go watch our tour video of Raptor Cliffs, showing Lucas Martel and Don Carson at Walkabout Mini Golf. And a video shot by Greg Lloyd for us. That is the first tour video that we've done of Walkabout Mini Golf that has not been filmed by my head movements. We contracted out for a freelancer to do that and did an amazing job. And Onikazi calling out what a complete environment that is. I have been to the Pacific Ocean. I've been to the Pacific Coast Highway. I have stopped at those roadside attractions that is being imagined by this roadside dinosaur mini golf course. And there's there's an incredible story just in the walking path you take from hole 1 to 18, and you get to hole 18, and I swear I've been to places in California that look exactly like hole 18. Just a phenomenal work for them to release that. So we had that a tour exclusively on this channel. If you came over from that video into this one, thank you for doing that. Please go watch that video. Maybe hit a like on that video too. Leave a comment. Let the Mighty Coconut devs know that you like their work and appreciate it. One of the things we compete against, I just need to point this out, right? We exclusively provide that tour each time Walkabout releases a new course. We have a good working relationship with Mighty Coconut where we get that access and go do that tour. And that tour is now over 24 videos long. We've got in that playlist of just the entire design history of Walkabout Mini Golf is contained across those tours. But here's the remarkable thing about it, right? Walkabout doesn't do any promotion for those streams and those videos we do. We don't do a whole lot of promotion for those video streams. And what that means is the Walkabout fans out there are all quiet observers, a lot like the people in this audience. I know a lot of people in this audience are fans of Walkabout, but they're all spread out over the world in their quiet little private enclaves, families that don't go online, don't have Discord, they don't go in the groups. It's hard for us to reach people with those videos. We can't reach all of the Walkabout players. So if you go hit a like on one of our tour videos or all of the tour videos, it will do enormous amounts to help us reach through the algorithm out to the Walkabout players out there, get them finding all of this wonderful detail about the worlds they love that's available for us on our channel. So thank you to Greg Lloyd for filming that for us. Thank you to Mighty Coconuts for giving us that access. I do recommend you go check out that entire design history. Thank you, David, for the incredible work, and to my entire team, Henry Stockdale, Don Hopper out there. You're doing incredible work covering the very latest in VR. So thank you so much for your work, and thank you to our audience. Anything you want to close out on, David?
Just seeing some ideas in the comments on the idea of like having opticians involved with AR glasses. Another example I thought would be interesting is today you go to a VR arcade and you try out these headsets in a team, for example, and then you walk home. It would be interesting to see a company like Meta supplying the headsets to a VR arcade on the condition that they have a section where they then sell them. So you go to a VR arcade, you experience something, and you with a Quest 3, and you buy the same Quest 3 and take it home to try things yourself. You could imagine there's so many possibilities other than even just doing direct retail stores. And yeah, I just think that was an interesting conversation. But thanks so much, everyone. It's great to see your comments again. Serious, detailed discussion here. Please let us know in the comments below if you have any thoughts afterwards. And yeah, we're excited to talk about those developer stories of ingenuity in mixed reality that we're going to be bringing to you over the next week on UploadVR.com and discussing next week on VR Download. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, our patrons and members. We'll see you.